We had a problem earlier. Trustee Swan, can you hear us? Well, in any event, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And it's my pleasure to call this meeting to order. And I would ask you to rise for the singing of our national anthem. Director, I'd ask you to take roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our regular board meeting of 27 November 2019. Trustee Barry.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Vice Chair McPherson.
Present.
Chair McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McCray. Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Grizian.
Present.
Cooler.
Present.
Trustee Swan. And student trustee Colton Kelford sends his regrets. Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Director. If we don't, we can connect with Trustee Swan. Maybe and just put her on speakerphone. Thank you. I need a motion, a mover and a seconder, please, for the consent agenda. That the board approve consent agenda items 502 to 503, November 27th, 2019, as submitted. Moved by Trustee Danaher and Trustee McPherson. All in favor? Unopposed? Carried. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing none, I will be moving to item 801, which is, Director, your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, our focus for most of our meetings has a strong instructional presence, and this evening, this board meeting is not different. Superintendent Coombs and I had a really terrific visit at one of our schools in the board, Duncan J. School in Smiths Falls. And many things that you're hearing this evening that's being brought to you, whether it's the director's work plan or our board improvement plan for student achievement and well-being, was active and being fully implemented in that site. As well, the board's also passed a number of different initiatives and pilot program commitments since last spring. One of them is their pupil Power Up program, and it's working with some of our students who have the highest needs. Both Superintendent Coombs and I could confirm to you that it, in these early days, is really off to a successful start. We've got students who are being well cared for and engaged by their classroom staff. We see integration happening in the school, which is a strong ethic of our board as well. And we also see students who are materializing in their learning goals more quickly because of this program that has a very specific focus and orientation. And as you know, Mr. Chair, there's 10 different pilot sites for this program. The board will be receiving a report in February as an update in terms of the implementation. And if we continue on this positive trajectory, and if this school is representative of the other 9 schools, I think we're going to have a very positive report to bring to you with a lot of stories about students' growth and success in sometimes very challenging circumstances. Lastly, as well, while visiting the school, there was a focus on the things that that our school district really values. A good pedagogy, and we certainly saw that in the classes that were in session with learning goals and success criteria, use of mindsets that talk about what students can do versus what they cannot do, which is enabling the success of all students and seeing their capacities to participate. And I also wanted to highlight the fact that there's a very active tracking of student data for the purposes of adjusting instruction and seeing what the response to intervention has been at the school. So as the school has their school improvement plan meetings and they go about their business to implement that at the school level, tracking a certain number of students to confirm whether or not the intervention is making a difference, and then extrapolating about whether or not that would be representative of a larger group of students. What was so important, I think, that what Superintendent Coombs and I saw was that the school principal and her staff had such a firm hand on the pulse of how students were learning and feeling. And I just can't help to say that I've seen a monumental change in that school in the time that I've gotten to know that community. And this principal and their staff are really replicating what the board is desiring for our students at that site. So I know that's Trustee Schooler's backyard in many ways, and he may have his own stories, but I wanted to highlight that as almost a case study of what the board is doing, enabling and promoting at this table, and seeing it taking place in our schools. I'll leave that as is, Mr. Chair, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Director, for those comments, insights. I have a very few comments, and I just would like to begin by mentioning one of my own schools last Friday, where I attended the I Pledge campaign against bullying, which was the kickoff for part of our anti-bullying week activities. And I know that occurred in all of our schools, but I was pleased to be part of that one. The director and I last Friday attended the Leeds Grenville Economic Development Summit, and we were very pleased at the reception that we were accorded. And there are many ongoing talks. And her and I will be meeting the Stormont folks tomorrow evening at their Education Town Hall. And I want to also mention that our union, which is the Ontario School Board Trustees Association, has come out. They released, I believe it was Monday, a polling data which they had conducted regarding several public education issues, ranging from student achievement to well-being, curriculum, funding, and governance. And I'm just going to read, if I could, the gist of it. The results indicate that a majority of Ontarians agree that spending in public education is an investment in the future, and they are twice as likely to say that spending on public education is more important than eliminating the deficit. 2/3 of Ontarians oppose or somewhat oppose having larger average class sizes or less course selection in order to save money. Ontarians are also nearly 5 times as likely to say the trustees should be elected rather than appointed. When asked about a number of initiatives, expanding opportunities for students to learn skilled trades and to earn apprenticeship hours garnered the highest intensity of support. That gives you a flavor of the support of people in Ontario for a strong public education system. And that is the message that I think our association wishes to bring forward to the government. I know Trustee McDonald was in Toronto this past weekend on ops business. You have anything to add?
Those are the real salient and highlight points associated to the release. But you know what I can say is when it was released on Monday morning at Queen's Park, the media picked up on it right away, and it certainly was part of the conversation throughout the course of the day, in question period and with meetings. On Monday, there were over 54 meetings with MPPs, formal, and then there were some informal meetings with MPPs, not myself, but trustees across the province. I did have the good fortune, though, to speak to every one of our MPPs within Upper Canada, for a brief period of time and some a little longer. And everyone was aware of the concerns across the province. Those concerns across the province are no different than they are here in Upper Canada. So it's a good opportunity for people to have a look and see what people across Ontario are saying. And of the people that were surveyed, 2/3 of them didn't actually have kids in the system currently. They may have at one time, they may be grandparents, but it's a good indication that education is an important matter for all individuals across the province, not just current parents that have kids in their system. So thank you for highlighting it there.
And I also want to point out that this is our final meeting of this year. Our first term ends, and certainly my first term as the chair ends. And just want to review very briefly the fact that we have come through some very difficult times this past year. We began with transportation crisis, budget crisis, passing of 2 team members, and we're now in the middle of labor action, from which I know we will exit gracefully at some point. And we have a new policy committee. We've taken quite a number of bold steps in the field of adult education in our Léger schools, as well as our international education. And of course, we were still consolidating the Building for the Future recommendations. So I think we owe ourselves a little pat on the back, to tell you the truth. Going to move on at this point to item 1001, I believe. It's the Board Improvement Plan for Student Achievement and Wellness. And Director, I will turn this over to you to introduce your team.
Mr. Chair, members of the board will know that the Ministry of Education requires all boards in Ontario to submit an annual improvement plan for the goals around achievement and well-being for our students. Our board is no different and is held to that expectation. It's an information item because the timeline for it to be due and the time that it was able to come to the board, we could not align in a good way. But it is really important to know that it is a plan, that it remains a focus to be updated as we collect data about our students' achievement, whether it's report card data or social emotional learning data that we do through our schools surveys or any of the other types of methods that our schools use. And it's really important to show that we're responsive to trying to get it right when it comes to where students need to learn and how they need to improve and become more strengthened in terms of their social capacities and their academic capacities. So tonight, we've got Superintendent Loshaw and Superintendent Ferguson, who will bring their respective team forward because we have a report on wellness. That's part of the board's achievement plan for wellness, separate but also aligned with the board's mental health support plan. And then we'll have some conversation as well and presentation around our academic program focus for our students in grades K to 12. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Loshaw and Superintendent Ferguson.
Thank you, Director Sliwa. Through you, Mr. Chair, it's our pleasure tonight to provide trustees with an overview of our board improvement plan for student achievement and wellness, which, as you know, we often refer to as our BIPSAW. Specifically tonight, we are wanting to share information with you about our student achievement results, highlight what is going well, discuss areas where we need to improve, and outline our plan for supporting students. To begin, it's important to note that our board's mission of preparing all students for a successful life is the driver of our BIPSAW. It's also worth noting that our BIPSAW connects the work of our teaching and learning team with the work that Superintendent Ferguson, Dr. Armstrong, and Dr. Inglis lead in the area of wellness. We recognize that if students are well, they are more likely to develop literacy and numeracy skills that will contribute to the outcomes that are required for graduation. So with that in mind, Dr. Armstrong will provide an update on the wellness component of the BIPSAW, and then Principal Amanda Nyman, who was recently appointed as our interim principal of teaching and learning, and Principal Shelley Corleon, who has been supporting our teaching and learning team, will outline the literacy and numeracy portion of the plan.
We've already been lucky enough to address this table earlier on in the year. What I'm going to say today is consistent with our earlier presentation, as it is our 3-year plan that's on the board website under district plans. So I want to tell you, first of all, about one of our goals, welcoming schools. Now, all of our goals this year really focus on getting to the classroom. So here's where we're at. About half of intermediate and secondary students report feeling safe attending school. That's on a survey of about 6,500 secondary students, secondary and intermediate students across our board. Also, positive learning climate was related to from items on about a 6 out of 10, and average ratings of about 6 out of 10 students, positive relationships with teachers. What we're doing well at is, even though those are suboptimal, I'll say, students keep showing up to school. And in fact, over the last 10 years, they keep showing up with increasing frequency. The rate of truancy has actually gone down, or self-reported truancy, as well as through our programs, experiential education, our kind of equity and inclusion, Indigenous education. Teachers, I think, more and more in classrooms are creating this environment where students are seeing themselves reflected in the academic work. They're seeing that it's important, it's real life, and that sort of thing. So what's going on? How do we have those ratings? How do we resolve those ratings with increased kind of engaging programming and decreased truancy? Well, during in August at our principals meeting, this was data collected by Shelley Corleone, that welcoming or mentally healthy classrooms was the second most common identified area of professional development requested by principals. We think maybe that the programs we've used before to create these environments have either been focused on too much on one-time presentations, they've been focused on individual programs, diffuse settings and efforts, that sort of thing. So what we'd like to do then is focus to develop a community of practice, some consistency in every school across our board in exactly how the activities we're using to welcome students and create those relationships. So we're focusing on 5 to 10 minute activities provided through School Mental Health Ontario and ETFO throughout our board. Next is the healthy coping. And so where we're at is 1 of every 3 students surveyed indicate moderate or high levels of stress or negative mood. It really depends on the survey, though, because about 17% on the Ontario Student Drug Use and Health Survey identified fair or poor self-rated mental health, and 46% identified trouble dealing with the stress of school. What's going well is that almost 9 out of 10 principals, or almost that, identify that there's intentional social emotional learning happening in their school. It's not accident or byproduct. It's that teachers are actively engaging in these practices. What's also going well is we've gone down by about 4% in the last 4 years of students identifying trouble dealing with the stress of school through the EPSIS READ survey. What we wonder if it's going on, so we're seeing some positive initial gains. First of all, we're thinking that there's lots of things that influence student wellness, okay? The school experience is a very small part overall of the things happening in our students' lives. But what we'd like to do, perhaps we're victims of our own success in some ways. So over, I think, the past 10, 15 years, perhaps efforts across the province that are seeing similar gains, we're saying to students that stress and anxiety are not normal. They're part of a pathology or mental illness or that sort of thing. In fact, stress and anxiety are normal parts of condition. They're good emotions to have. They represent challenge and stress and learning new things. So what we need to get better at doing is identifying what is typical, healthy, normal stress, and what are more signs of kind of pathology, and tolerating kind of certain amount of stress. And so what we plan to do is take basically some programs that work from CHEO, the Mind Masters program, as well as the Psychology Foundation of Canada tools. You probably know those as Kids Have Stress Too or Stress, and make those our consistent social emotional learning program throughout the board, again establishing that community of practice. Finally, the other thing we're working on too is getting students the right support at the right time. Now, in April of 2019, about less than half, about 43% of principals identified that at least 80% of their teachers knew how we support children with mental illness at school or mental health needs. And so a lot fewer than I would have liked could articulate the pathway to mental health care. Now that's in the context of us having some actually very good protocols with community partners. In Eastern Ontario, we seem to have tight links, and we see our community partners a lot. We speak with them, and we have very good understanding. Most of those are consistent with the other school boards. What we think has gone on is that those protocols, as much as we kind of like to reference them, are these big books that kind of sit on a shelf often. We're not paying attention to the actual implementation of it. How do we get these in the hands of every custodian, office administrator, of every teacher, of every EA, of everyone that's in a school building? So what we're going to do is we've developed, first of all, overview documents that can link just kind of a one-shot and link the forms that you need in Insight or whatever a principal would need, whether it's a violent threat, whether it's a suicide risk, whether it's CAS reporting matter, any of those things. Next, we've kind of identified the school support system. So we've got up there pictures of bulletin boards that should be in kind of every school by now that really articulate that process. These bulletin boards are for teachers, not students necessarily, because we thought it most important, while educating students is a priority, and we're doing that through our goals number 1 and 2. We also want to target teachers in places that they're going to be looking, in the staff rooms or wherever. So that's part of our process. And I'm happy to address questions about that, but I'll hand this over to talk about other SIPSOs now.
Thank you, everyone, for having us tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the strong support that Shelley Corleone has provided to me as I've entered into this role. So felt it's necessary to say that tonight. As Superintendent Loshaw mentioned, we're here to share the main points of our teaching and learning plan. The way that our format of our presentation will be is that we'll share information about our results, highlight where learning is going well, where we need to improve in student learning, and our plan for this improvement. Oh, the newbie. So beginning with our results and where we are now. So as you can see in front of you, we've posted EQAO results. The first graphic on the right is the literacy. And when we analyze those results, we see we are approaching the provincial results in reading and writing. However, we recognize there's room for improvement in all areas. Specifically, when looking at the writing data, which is currently our biggest gap, our greatest need is helping students understand and use the criteria for what good writers do when writing for different purposes. We are encouraged that 23 to 31% of our students are at level 2. We recognize we wouldn't love for them to stay there, but they are closely approaching provincial standard, which gives us some comfort in terms of where we can go next from a data perspective. I'll also highlight some areas where learning is going well. Our OSSLT results improved by 3% from last year, meeting the goal that we had set. Our grade 6 writing results improved by 3%, surpassing the goal we set of an increase of 1% last year. Also, from a confidence perspective, we understand that when students have confidence in themselves as readers and writers, well, they read and they write more often. 95% of our students say, I am a good reader and writer. This, for us, is a great place to begin.
When we look at Upper Canada mathematics data as compared to the province, we know we also need to improve our math results in grades 3, 6, and 9 to close the gap with provincial data. We are encouraged that there are further 15 to 17% of our students who are at a high level 2 and are very close to the provincial standard. Our plan will help support these students to move to that standard. I, too, would like to highlight some areas where learning is going well. 93% and more of our students are indicating that not only do they like math, but they can answer difficult math questions. Research indicates that students' attitudes towards math are linked to long-term achievement, and the fact that students are feeling more confident in their skills and indicating that they enjoy math are steps in the right direction. Also, when we drilled down into the EQAO data and analyzed the grade 9 applied results, which is a focus area in our plan, and looked at the students who were successful, 34% of them were not at provincial standard when they were in grade 6. They are now at provincial standard. This is a huge gain. So where is the learning breaking down for some students? When we analyzed the EQAO data, we learned our greatest need is helping students answer questions that are real-world, multi-step problems. Questions such as this one challenged our students. Only about half of our students can answer these types of questions. In response to this, our focus this year is helping students make sense of these more challenging problems and learn strategies to successfully solve these problems.
Similarly, in literacy, we've discovered that learning is breaking down for some students in questions that ask them to understand what they are reading when the information is not directly stated. When you look at the math problem that Shelley has just presented, students need to read problems for understanding. You can see why literacy needs to be directly connected to mathematics so that our students can make sense of what they are reading regardless of the content area. Our plan combines an integrated focus in reading, writing, and mathematics.
So what is our plan? Here are our goals. For the purpose of board monitoring, we are asking educators to monitor the learning of our focus students. Much as Director Sliwa shared with DJ Schooler, all of our schools are doing this. The lens on focus students allows the educators to plan for individualized next steps for student learning and programming for all of their students. As per the ministry direction, we will continue to focus on the fundamentals of mathematics. By developing a strong understanding of numbers, students will be able to perform mathematical calculations quickly and accurately, whether they do so mentally, on paper, or by using a calculator. The ultimate goal is for them to be able to perform mathematical procedures with ease. This skill will support students as they develop their skills in critical thinking and problem solving, necessary skills for their lives. Every day, we're making correct change when making a purchase, estimating how many cans of paint are needed to paint a room, measuring ingredients when cooking, determining how much tile is needed for a new floor, and calculating the tip on a restaurant bill. By focusing on fundamental math skills, we will help our students in real life be able to answer these types of questions. You can see by the data collected in June, and we also have our October data, that we are beginning to make some strong gains in students' understanding of mathematics. Our ultimate goal is to be precise to support our students to be independent learners.
In order for our students to move forward to becoming independent learners, here is the basis of our integrated plan for literacy and mathematics. This is a very simple graphic that represents a very complex plan. Knowing our learners, so putting the students first, is the key foundation in any plan for improvement. We need to clearly understand what is going well for students. Where is their learning breaking down? Finding ways to bring out student thinking is such an important part of our work. Using what we know about student thinking and learning helps our educators to plan precise, individualized programming and next steps for learning. The resources used to support our professional learning in literacy and numeracy may differ, but ensuring that students have opportunities to learn in different ways is supported at all times.
So how can educators ensure students have opportunities to learn in different ways? educators need to include these 4 components, as you can see in this graphic. Students need the opportunity to have learning modeled for them. They need to be able to share in the learning with one another and their educators. They also need to have learning opportunities that are specific to their individual needs to help move them to become independent learners. As an example, educators may pull 5 students together at a specific time based on shared student needs to build their common understanding. This is called guided practice.
The bottom section of our graphic moves to independent practice. So as we move toward our goal for improving student learning across our system, the ultimate goal is to increase student independence. Understanding our learners and their thinking will help us know where the learning is going well and where the learning is breaking down as we continue to reference through this presentation. This information helps us plan for individual next steps and includes all students in those plans. Not only are educators able to identify and determine goals and next steps, because students have such a strong and thorough understanding of what successful readers and writers do and what strategies successful mathematicians use, they can then assess their own work and the work of their peers to set their own goals and plan for next steps. Truly a powerful process when you see it in action. The 2 pictures on the screen show where in different classrooms teachers have co-created success criteria, and beside are sticky notes with students' names where they have analyzed their own work and set goals for next steps, allowing the teachers to be precise in how they approach that teaching and learning with students. So by providing opportunities for modeled, shared, guided, and independent practice, educators are supporting students on their journey to becoming independent learners who are able to confidently read, write, and do mathematics in all areas of our curriculum. In order to bring the vision to the system, here's how we will carry out the plan we just shared. We will have face-to-face professional learning for educators in targeted schools, as well as administrators facilitating school-based learning for all schools in the form of monthly learning teams, PA days, and staff meetings. By repeating the cycle of learning from modeled through to independent practice, infusing the wellness plan of helping students cope in healthy ways with stress, and providing the right supports at the right times in all of our classrooms, our goal is to have students become independent learners who are well and able to confidently read, write, and do math.
Thank you. So at this point in time, we would welcome any questions related to either the wellness portion of the JIPSAW or the literacy or numeracy.
Please, do you have any questions? Mr. McRae.
In the third to last screen, there's 4 practices defined. One is modeling practice and another is guided practice. What's the difference?
Oops, you go ahead.
Fight each other.
No, you go ahead.
Modeled practice is really driven by the teacher in response to data he or she has collected in the classroom. And it is what we would also call explicit teaching or modeling of a learning process. It's very direct and it's often done in a whole group setting where the teacher is trying to get something to all students, but it's very clearly laid out and very clearly modeled for them. Guided practice is more based on your data. You're clustering groups of students into smaller groups and being really precise about what you're working on with that group of students at that particular point in time.
You believe them to be quite distinct?
The role of the, through you, Chair, it's the role of the teacher to know what pieces of the curriculum all of their students are struggling with, or where there's a need that involves all the students. And so that would be the point at which the teacher would be modeling and doing some shared learning with all of the students in the classroom. Where we get to guided practices, we know that we have individualized needs based on our learners, and we would say, well, these 5 students are really struggling, for example, with inferring in reading, and so we're going to have a targeted guided group with these 5 students to focus specifically on helping them infer when they're reading, whereas other students may not need this, and they would be grouped perhaps for an enrichment opportunity in reading. So it's very precise and more group-based.
Person.
Figure out how to word this without making myself look ancient. I learned my mathematics in a one-room school. And I'll admit, it's been a while since I've been in a classroom, especially one that was specialized in mathematics. The thing that I remember about my learning was the visual clue, the times table above the blackboard. I know it's old-fashioned, but that's how I learned math. Are we still using any of those tried and true technologies? I guess not the proper word. And are we still using those kind of things in our classroom? Through the chair.
Through you, Chair. Our ultimate goal is for our students to be able to have those known math facts at the tip of their fingers, much like you learned when you were in school. Where there is a breakdown is that for some of our students, they don't easily access those math facts just through memorization. If you look in terms of data, in terms of number of students who attended, we have students now who are staying in school until they're 18 and 19, and so we have a larger population of students with diverse needs. And so we are trying to make sure that all of our students have strategies for solving basic math fact problems, so that if they cannot quickly pull it out from their memory, so I'll give you an example. For me, I can never remember 8 times 6. I don't know why. It's a stumbling block that I have as a math teacher, but I know that if I can take 8 and divide it in half and instead do 4 times 6, and that's 24, I just double that very, very quickly in my head and I can come up with 48. I don't come up with it through memorization. I come up with it through a strategy of taking half of it and doubling the answer. And so we want to get to the quick memorization of facts, but it is through proficiency and having strategies at the ready that make it efficient to get to those math facts. And that's the difference, I would say.
You share my questions through the literacy results. I know in grade 3 we can say that it's 95%, in grade 6 it's dropped to 81%. Perhaps we've done something more recently in primary that has improved those. What are we doing to now assist those grade 6 students so that when they get to grade 10 and they have to do the literacy test, what are we doing to support them? Because obviously they're at 81%.
Through you, Chair. We've really been thinking a lot about this in the last 3 weeks for me. I'm sure it was thought about a lot. Well, I know it was thought about a lot before I arrived on the scene, but that's exactly where we're looking at in terms of literacy, is taking this kind of approach and really focusing in on our students in 4 through 10, grades 4 through 10, coupled with our Indigenous portfolio with some of our content for our students, and really making sure that we have a clear understanding of exactly where the learning is not getting to where we need it to be. And then in using high yield strategies, which vary depending on what those areas of concern are, to really specifically target those areas with precision. I think in the past, as a principal and as a teacher, I may have taken one direction and kind of went that way with everybody, but through the collection of our data, we're really able to see where those precise points of instruction are required, and we're able to move into that. We're also going to be thinking about how guided practice, which I don't have hard data on this, but in my experience happens a lot in primary classrooms, but not so much in junior intermediate. And we're going to be taking a look about what that targeted guided practice will look like in the older grades.
Well, when do you expect those? Like, what are your sort of projections towards that? So, like, do you expect that you be able to develop it by June or by?
Through you, Chair, we're actually already starting with the planning phases of that. We're also connecting, as I said, with Indigenous and the experiential learning portfolios to give students some experiences that will give them something they're interested and capable of writing about or reading about. So we're in the planning phases of selecting our resources and planning for some of that professional learning. And our actual first planning day is in December. And we'd be looking at beginning some of those sessions in January, provided we're able to do so.
Dr. Armstrong, I have a question for you. Could you explain, so here's what we're going to do. There's a bulletin board and a post. Could you explain that to us?
Sure. So if we go back there through you, Chair, the bulletin board consists of a number of information staff, because over these last few years, one of our real stumbling blocks was getting to classroom staff on kind of small to nil budgets. And so what we're trying to do is put those in every staff room. On there, what you're going to find is information, first, probably foremost importantly, what to do in the event that you're concerned about a suicidal student. And the flow chart on where our board accesses, and in every part of our board, what is your children's mental health number, your addictions number, and your crisis. Beyond that, we've got information, for example, try this. So some of our, those resources I was talking about before with the 3 to 5 minute exercises from ETFO and School Mental Health Ontario. We've got kind of an example of the board mental health plan. We've got EAP, so our staff wellness kind of there as well. So we've got a few different things there that we want to highlight for staff so that every staff has the opportunity to be acquainted kind of at a glance with what are the things that we're doing well. The last thing I kind of forgot to mention too is it should contain each school's SIPSA. And particularly in wellness as well. Because while we can kind of set an agenda for harmonization across kind of the board in terms of what we're doing with social emotional learning, every school is a little bit different. And so the wellness goal for the SIPSAs allows each school to say, what are our parents, our communities, and our students telling us about what's important for them, whether it's exam timetabling or activities during recess or whatever that is. And let's actually work on that and monitor it. So all of those things we figure are very important things. So we want to put them where staff can see them and actually have some time to look.
Thank you very much. Supplementary to you, either Amanda or Shelley. Before you mentioned your strategy, 8 times 6, I have another strategy. It's called my wife. She gets all the tough ones. Before I answer the question about the number of tires to be pumped, I want to know how revved up this tricycle is. Most tricycles have hard rubbers. Gary?
Sorry to lengthen this, but I can't shut up. Would you roll it back to the Quaker results, please?
Literacy or numeracy?
Right there. When you get the SIPSA report, we see pretty troublesome results in grade 6 math. But there's Ontario at 48%. If you're if you're a principal and you're supervising a class, through the chair, and consistently the class, less than half the class passed, or you're a professor at university, what would happen if consistently over half the class passed? What's going to happen now that a friend of our premier is what's the prediction? What's your reaction to 48% pass?
So through you, Chair, we agree that provincially and in Upper Canada, the results in mathematics are dismal, and there is much work to do around improving mathematics. through you, Chair, your first question was around what do you do when over half of your students are failing? I do want to make clear that those results represent level 3 or provincial standard, which is marks if you're going to assign marks, because we don't assign marks in the primary and junior grades, but we do assign letter grades in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we're not talking about 40s and 30s in terms of percentages. It doesn't represent failures. It represents the provincial standard of level 3. So I do want to clarify that. I do believe that our model that we've presented tonight of building capacity of educators in the classrooms and administrators in their schools facilitating the learning, where we can be precise about where the learning is breaking down for specific students and then target the learning specifically for those students based on their needs through the guided practice, will lead to increased knowledge, skills, independence, critical thinking abilities for our students. And this will be the plan that we will carry out.
Tough question to answer, but
Well, through you, Chair, I mean, I cannot speak for what the province's vision is and what impact the province will have in terms of our future outcomes for our students. So I will leave that one on the table. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Trustee McCray?
Quick question. When do students face the intricacies of English grammar these days? What grades?
Through you, Chair, I would actually have to take a really solid look at the curriculum documents to give you the science on that. However, the reading and writing curriculum is broken into components with conventions, sentence fluency, which, run right from grade 1. And so how teachers have chosen to teach that, explicitly or not, depending on the classroom, I would say I've seen variances across my time as a principal. It is there, but it's there in the context of what kids are reading and writing. So I would say, as opposed to when I sat in my grammar class and, I was taught when to use someone and I and someone and me, that is put into the context of what students are reading and what they're writing. And when Director Sliwa commented on learning goals and success criteria, it's a huge foundational piece in grammar and conventions. So as teachers look at samples of writing, students are pulling out what good looks like in terms of the use of conventions, and then they're creating a criteria that they can ensure they've included in their own writing as they do that. So a lot of it is based on looking at samples, creating criteria, and then actually having students practice it when they're reading and when they're writing.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think that was elucidating.
Thank you for having us.
Trustees, I want to indulge you a little bit in my chair's comments. I had omitted the fact that we were going to play the SIPSAW school improvement videos for trustee feedback on the format only, not the content. So we have two schools, Glentay and Meadowview Public School, and this came out of the Accountability Framework Committee, if you recall. We had been toying with the idea of how to best present these. It's an information item here, but I wanted to show you the two videos, which are brief, and then I'd just like your feedback as to quickly tell us what you think of it. So, please.
I'm Krista Warren. I'm the principal of Glentay Public School.
And I'm Claire Snyder. I'm the vice principal and special education teacher at Glentay Public School.
Glentay is a wonderful little rural school out in the Tay Valley. We have 5 classrooms, going from JK all the way up to grade 6.
I think one of the most special things about Glentay is the circle of community that surrounds our students. We have an amazing, dedicated staff who work every day so hard to build the relationships between themselves and students. And if you were in our building, I'd like you to notice the laughter that goes alongside the learning. It's a wonderful place to work, to come to every day. We see smiles on our kids' faces as they're learning.
I like doing the design challenge every morning when you go in.
That's fun, doing the design challenge. And then we get points for doing it.
Every day we do like a thing where you go in and it says on the smart board what to do. And today it was design 3 tools that all have the same perimeter from Minecraft.
Yeah, we do math and then you'll pick one that looks good or like something that was done really well, and he'll give them like this prize thing that we have and some points. And then at the end of the day we usually have this auction and we like auction off some toys to buy stuff with our money that we earn over the day.
I like about my school doing math and art. Reading and like math. I have the best teacher ever. She does a lot of math.
Another really special part about Glentay is the amount of volunteers we have within our building. On any given day, you can find at least one volunteer in our school, or it's our volunteers that come in to read with our kindergarten students or other students, maybe to fill book bags, or to do a variety of tasks around the school. And these are not only parents of students, these are volunteers from our community. Can you tell us about your favorite part about Glentay?
I think I love it.
All of it?
Yeah.
Okay, is there one thing that stands out in particular?
Music.
Music. And who teaches you music?
My drama teacher.
Your drama teacher, Ms. Mason? Yeah, so Ms. Mason teaches you drama and dance, right? And music.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what play you were in?
I'm in Lion King.
Yep, you were in The Lion King.
Yes, I was.
And tell us about what you were doing in The Lion King.
I think it was a zebra, a grass coming to like, and a zebra.
And you were a zebra, yeah.
And movies.
You like plays, don't you?
Yeah.
Anything to do with music.
Yeah.
And drama. Yeah, lovely. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I think when we go up is a singer.
Oh, good. Yeah, and so I think your teachers already asked you, what do you really love about this school? What's great about this school?
I'm thinking about math.
Math?
Yeah, math.
Everybody loves math at this school.
Yep.
Must have a really good math program here.
Yep.
Number 2.
Hi, I'm Dave Corney, and I'm proud to be the principal of Meadowview Public School, located in the beautiful rural community of Addison, Ontario. This modern learning hub was built in 2004 and amalgamated the students and staff from 3 rural communities, Addison, New Dublin, and Frankville. Parent involvement and student leadership form the backbone of Meadowview. Our students and volunteers devote time to our school council, reading program, snack and lunch programs, fundraising, and assist with sports and special activities. We have a strong student leadership team that promotes our Hawk values, provides school spirit, and gives direction and support to our school programs and activities. We're a platinum level eco school, which is the highest level available. Students recycle, compost, plant trees, and learn about environmental stewardship. Our school community recently developed the motto Hawk to represent the characteristics we want our students to display: honesty, accountability, work hard, and kindness. The staff at Meadowview have a strong sense of our board mission of preparing all students for a successful life through a solid SIPSA plan, hands-on learning, and a focus on wellness.
So I'm Rachel Boosterman. I have 3 kids here at Meadowview. 2 kids here at Meadowview. A daughter in junior kindergarten and a daughter in grade 3. My son just left Meadowview and he's now a teen.
And I'm Megan Simmons, and I also have 2 kids now here at Meadowview. I have one in grade 1, a daughter, and a son in grade 6. And I had a third, but he's in grade 8 now.
I really love just how small the school is. The enrollment is a lot higher than it has been in previous years, but it's still this hidden gem. And with having such a small school, gives you a sense of family here. Everyone knows each other. The big kids know the little kids. Everyone knows each other by name. So me as a volunteer, I create relationships with other children. And I know that Megan and other parents are creating relationships with my children.
Well, I'm part of Parent Council, same with Rachel. We were both in Parent Council, and we both work on the hot lunch program, so serving the hot lunch and making hot lunch once a month. We also make it in-house, so make spaghetti, or we just had soup, and we do that kind of stuff. Also, when my kids were in kindergarten, I also help read to them in the kinder program, and we just help out where's needed, chaperoning for sports and stuff like that.
I like Meadowview because it's an honest and safe place to talk to people, and you can share things with your friends. And Meadowview has a leadership team, and they plan things and fun events for the kids to learn and have fun.
I like Meadowview because we're honest, accountable, we work hard, and we're kind. And the student leadership team made that motto.
The teachers at Meadowview are really nice, and they help you a lot of the times when you have trouble. And the student leadership team is awesome too, because the people on the student leadership team get to help the little kids at the school.
At Meadowview Public School, every day we strive to be good Hawks. And if you're honest, accountable, work hard, and kind, you're an honorary Hawk for life.
So trustees, if you look at item 1701, which is the information item, you will see that there are 3 links, one to the school website, the other to the school improvement plan, and the third to the Facebook or Twitter page. What you saw here was the video highlight. And I guess the feedback we would like, not with regard to content, but with regard to format. Does this answer your need to understand what's happening, say, at Glen Tay or at Meadowview? So you give me some quick feedback. Trustee McDonald, as chair of the Accountability Framework Committee, will take back.
in all fairness, it does not tell us a whole lot. It's nice, but if I was viewing that as an outsider, I would like to see something about enrollment. Just a chart, same as what we were getting before. I'd like to see UAO results. I'd like to see something as whether or not it's an EFI school or a core school. It's nice, but there's not a lot of information there, and that's just my honest opinion.
I enjoyed the video. I thought it was informative because the other questions we have on our website based on the statistics, we can see that information. So we could link the video. We could link our website page on that video if need be to each school where that information is. However, I just like maybe a similar questions asked to the students, so you could sort of highlight similar things at each school, as well as some of our schools have a very strong bilingual program. So maybe if we had a student that said we talked English and French, or if they like their French program, because a lot of the schools do have half-day French immersion programs, so we could highlight that as well.
I liked about it, as long as we can get to some of the things Bill's talking about, some of the actual data. I like to hear from kids, and I like to hear from parents around the school. And I think that video gives us that opportunity to hear how they feel. The kids were the most important piece of the puzzle. And then the parents are good.
Thank you, Chair. I personally enjoyed the two videos. It gave me more of a flavor for the two schools. If I try to compare it to when we had the principals in and doing the presentation of the school, it was all a cookie cutter and all on, and it didn't really give me a flavor for the school other than the data that was there. But it didn't give me anything else. And I personally like the fact that this is personal. Lets you see, and I know what Meadowville's like now, and I know what it's like. Even though they're not in my area, I still now know what those two schools are about more than I would have if I had seen the data for me.
I agree, and I with what you've said, and I appreciate that the students and the parents were actively involved in this presentation.
Thank you. I think the Chair was trying to allude to is to make sure that, first of all, the video format is the right format. And from a content standpoint, we didn't necessarily want to discuss that tonight, but we have. So I'll jump in. And really the video is intended to be just that, a showcase, a highlight of the school. The data that we have around our schools is available in about 14 different places. EQAO website, our website. We will have presentations about board-wide EQAO. We're trying to change the communication, the conversation around a particular school EQAO to a board assessment and a board plan that we're going to do across the system. And what this is really trying to accomplish is making sure that us, as trustees, are aware of what schools are all about, what makes them function. That's what we want people to make decisions about, is whether they get a good feel about that school when they walk in, and whether the people in the school are learning and having a good time and feel welcome in that building. We also want that to be part of the messaging when it goes out to our communities. And so this format is really for us to make sure that we have some highlights associated to that, which the principals in both cases, and sometimes students and parents also cover off some of those key components within our SIPSA. But really, it's making sure that we're aware of the great things that are happening in all of our schools and our broader stakeholders to make sure that they're all aware. When people come and make a presentation about their school, it's hard for us to get a good measurement, a good sense of what that school is like based on 4 or 5 slides. And so what this is doing is allowing people to see inside the building and to see the excitement in kids' faces when they're there. And that's what we want people to understand and to see.
As Meadowview is on is one of my schools, and I can honestly say that flavor that you received about Meadowview Public School was very accurate. And I do like the fact that for all of these presentations, the video presentations, it provides some latitude to the principal and the staff and the parents to highlight what they think of school, not what we think. Trustee Barry?
If you were a real estate salesman in one of those areas, which would you rather have? Presentations that we have had in the past, or what? Try to sell the house area. Rest case.
The last thing I would suggest that we do is to show the videos every board meeting. It's only 10 minutes, and it highlights the schools, and I think that would be do it real justice to the schools to bring that presentation up from 17 information into the board.
We wouldn't have this discussion. We would just have.
No, absolutely. We just see the videos, got a flavor for the schools, and it will do the communities good if they're watching as well. See the videos that we do.
Very good point. Trustee Jacobs.
Videos, I think they're excellent. They're putting the length of the video good, putting faces to names. Also, I guess maybe a personal request to add as informational things in a video, maybe to show where they fit on the map in Upper Canada School District. I think that would be helpful too for, just like you said about the real estate. If you're a parent that's not in here or not in the Upper Canada School District just yet, they'll see the face and the names, and they'll see the highlighted. It'll create interest not only for the parent but also for the child. You know, the things that were available in there. I couldn't see any kid not wanting to go choose each one of those schools until they've seen the other schools highlighted. Then they'd be at a difficult choice. But I thought they were excellent videos, and just the geographical area, just the personal request that would be helpful.
Point. Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, Trustee Swan.
I also would like to concur with the trustee that just spoke, and I'm sorry. But I would like to see, and I hear a big echo, so I don't know if it's me or you, but I'd like to see how we're doing in some videos of how our Akwesasne students and our Aboriginal education is doing, because we don't see many videos of that, and I think that would also be huge. Just an eye-opener for the whole board. Thank you.
Okay, trustees, I think we've got some good feedback for the Accountability Framework Committee and for the director, so thank you so much. We're going to move on, ladies and gentlemen, to item 10.01. Board of the Policy Committee. I'm going to turn this over to Trustee Krem as chair of the committee to introduce it. And then we have 5 motions, and they will be read individually and discussed individually. So I'll turn it over to you, Trustee Krem.
Thank you, Chair. The committee met on October 30th in Kemple, and a very productive meeting reviewing 12 of our policies. We have over 80 policies currently on our books, and one of the goals of the committee is to review each of them in a 2-year cycle so that we always have up-to-date policies. I'd like to thank Director Sliwa and the committee members, Trustee Président and Trustee McDonald, for the valuable input that they give in discussions. They're quite heavily, discussed and vetted very thoroughly. Today, we're presenting only 5 of the 12 policies for your consideration. As we expect, there might be debate occurring on some of the recommendations. For you tonight, you will have Policy 311, the Code of Conduct for the board members and trustees. Policy 124, the Code of Conduct for the Upper Canada District School Board. The appendix to Policy 124, which is the USB Code of Conduct. Policy 220, Conflict of Interest, and Policy 414, Disposal of Assets. Some of those policies needed to be reviewed because of timelines. Others needed to be reviewed because of previous input from the board. And some just needed to be redone on the cyclical nature of priority that we put to some of the policies. There is a recommendation for Policy 311, I believe, if you want to read the motion before I speak to it.
I have a motion moved by trustee Cram, seconded by trustee Parizien, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 311-311, Code of Conduct, board members, trustees, as reviewed with revisions November 27th, 2019. Would you care to go through this?
Thank you, Chair. This is a very lengthy document. It consists of 9 pages that encompasses 6 principles and 2 procedural steps. Notwithstanding the 3 changes to this document that we'll be presenting for consideration, if you have discovered any other areas for change consideration, trustees, we would encourage you to present any additional amendments before we move to the next policy. We have 3 suggested changes to policy 311 that we would be introducing at this time in the form of principle 2, which is the avoidance of personal advantage and conflict of interest. Currently, there is no definition of conflict of interest in our policy. We are recommending that a standard definition of conflict of interest, as you see highlighted in yellow, be included in our policy. In the procedure 9, which is the informal complaint procedure, again, currently we do not have a timeline in our procedure to resolve an informal complaint. We are recommending that a 60-day timeline, as you highlighted in yellow, for the chair of the board to receive a response to an informal complaint and be a reasonable amount of time to attempt to resolve the issue. The third recommendation we're making for this policy is procedure 16. It's a review requirement for the code of conduct for board members and trustees. Provincial regulations now require the board to review its code of conduct on a cyclical basis, if not earlier. We are recommending that this regulation, highlighted in yellow, be incorporated into our policy. That would be the 3 changes, Chair, that we would see in this policy. Open for questions or debate.
Before we go to debate, I believe that I was remiss in not seeking a mover and a seconder of that motion. I guess I did, right? Yeah, I did. Yeah, we did. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Yes, I have a comment.
Go ahead, trustee Swan.
In regards to 9 informal complaint procedures, it says a 60-day time period. I am wondering why we didn't go to 45, and I'm asking this through you to Donald Cram.
Thank you, trustee Swan. We debated timeline. We went from 30 to 60, 90, 45 was somewhere in there. But we thought 60 days was a reasonable amount of time, depending on when the complaint could come in, because it does not say 60 business days. It does not say anything else, but 60 days is basically 2-month period. And we thought that was sufficient to get the complaint out to somebody and get a response that came back from the person who the complaint was against, so that the chair could have appropriate time to try to resolve it.
Okay. Did you break down where the origin of this complaint could come from?
Yes. Trying to be very, very, try not to go through any personal stuff that may have happened, but yeah, there probably was an informal complaint that was never solved because there was not any response coming back from the person, and because we have no timeline, we really couldn't solve the issue.
I guess what I mean to say is this trustees complaining about trustees or staff complaining?
Yes. It's trustees to trustees.
Oh, I'm getting that. Okay.
Other questions? Are you ready for the question? You have the motion.
May I say something here?
Yes.
Did I get the okay?
Yes.
As a trustee, and as to you, Trustee McCrae, I have had 2 complaints against me, and I would like that lowered to 45 days because it's a terrible thing to go through when another trustee complains about your behavior. So I think 60 days is too long just to get a response. I would like it at least 45 or 30 days. So I would like to have that amended to 45 days minimum.
So we have
Thank
an
you.
amendment to trustees.
I want to clarify, it can happen much sooner, but what we're saying is that the trustee who has a complaint against them has 60 days to respond. So, it can be done in 3 days, but we're giving the individual 60 days to respond to you or to the chair. That's what the 60 days is. It's not 60 days for anything else.
Does that clarify or respond to your query, Trustee Swan?
That's still clarified, but I still think it should be shorter. I don't think a trustee should have 2 months to respond. I think we should all respond if we have an allegation against us far sooner. So that's my opinion, and I've been in that situation. So I would like to recommend 45 as the minimum.
We have an amendment to the motion to replace the figure of 60 to 45. Any further comment? I need a seconder for that. Do you need a seconder? Trustee?
Yes, I need a seconder, please. Someone?
Is there a seconder? Trustee McRae? Do we have a seconder? The motion's on the floor. Is there any discussion for the amendment? Trustee McPherson?
My problem with 45 days is that I think that when a trustee has a code of conduct brought against them, time is in your favor. I think that, as Trustee McDonald alluded, you can respond in 15 days. What this is saying is that you have up till 60 days to respond. And at that point, the board can take action without. So I think we should err on the side of generosity here, rather than imposing a shorter timeline on what is, quite frankly, probably a very emotional time. So I'm not in favor of shortening the time frame on it. Sorry.
Any further comments? If not, we will take the vote on, are you clear on the motion? It will read that rather than should more than 60 days lapse, it would be should more than 45 days lapse. That's the amendment.
Okay, may I just have a secondary comment here? And it's not, are we voting on the whole procedure
we're
here?
voting on your amendment, Trustee Swan.
Okay, that's fine, because I have another one in the procedure that I'd like changed.
I will call the question, please. All those in favor? I guess, are we doing a vote electronically? Yes.
Is this for the 45 days?
Yes, 45 days. Just the amendment. Yeah, please. That motion failed. So I'm now moving to the original motion, which I have already read. All those in favor? Pardon?
May we speak on the original motion?
Cast your votes online, please. That motion carries. Was there another point that you wanted to make, Trustee Swan?
Yes, we have 2.5 said trustees should endeavor to participate in professional development opportunities to enhance their ability to fulfill their obligations. But there is no measure of how many or how much professional development they should participate in, which is an immeasurable thing, so I thought we should make it measurable. Thank you.
Helps at all, you recall that I did strike a committee of trustees, 3 trustees, to examine the trustee PD fund. Is that of any help to you?
Oh yes, I am very much aware, but if somebody could be called on code of conduct for not attending, and then, like, it's not saying 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. It's not saying anything. So somebody could still be called by another trustee for not going to an PD, and that's just my point.
Actually, can you guide me here?
Here through you, I think there's a couple of options available to the board. Number one is that it could be returned to the committee for that discussion if it's the desire of the board. Another option, of course, is that the natural review that comes in the cycle for when this next comes up, that could be tagged or earmarked when the committee revisits that. You also have a question, Mr. Chair?
No, I don't.
I would be fine if it came up at the next review, which is within 6 months. So that's fine. But I'm just saying it's immeasurable, and I think it has to be a measurable outcome.
I'm not certain it would be within 6 months, because the next cyclical review of the policy committee would be 2 years from now, unless we're being directed from the board to look at it again, which is one of Director Sliwa's suggestion, which would be to refer it back to the policy committee for that particular area. Or number two would be to put an amendment on the floor right now, just because it's the three we've highlighted as my original statement, is we're reviewing the policy. So we could be putting an amendment on the floor now.
I think 2.5 is being read out of context. 2.5 is part of Principle 2, which is avoidance of personal advantage and conflict of interest. The PD is associated to that. So if there is an issue associated to personal advantage or conflict of interest, 2.5 is talking about PD associated to that particular area that would help the obligations of a trustee. It's not talking about PD in general. It's about PD associated to advantage and conflict. So we're not saying that if you don't attend something, you're going to be a conflict of interest or a code of conduct issue. That's not it. It's if you have an issue, there is PD available. And OESC, which is an arm's length of OPSPA, does have several modules that are available to trustees at no cost and can be done in the leisure of your own home.
You understand that clarification, Trustee Swan?
Yes, I do. And I didn't read it that way because it was a separate comment. I didn't read it as connected to the other one, but thank you.
Okay, I believe we have voted on that one. So we are now going to move to motion number 2. It's moved by Trustee Patizier, seconded by Trustee Cram, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 124, Code of Conduct, as reviewed with revisions November 27th, 2019. Trustee Patizier?
So we reviewed the policy. Currently, this policy states that the code of conduct be reviewed annually by the Director of Education. Now that the board has established a policy committee, we recommend that annually by the Director of Education be deleted and replaced with as part of the regular policy reviews. As part of the regular cycle of policy reviews conducted by the board policy committee. Is there any question?
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Would you cast your vote? That motion carries. The next motion, number 3, moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee McDonald, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 124, Code of Conduct Appendix, as reviewed with revisions November 27, 2019. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. We recently amended policy 303, which was the use of personal electronic devices, to reflect the new provincial guidelines that came into effect on November 4th. We felt it would then be appropriate to amend this appendix by inserting the yellow highlighted statement to respect the needs of others who work in an environment that is conducive to learning and teaching with respect to the use of personal electronic devices. This is a code of conduct that goes through the entire board down into the employees and so on.
In essence, this is keeping in with the policy of the province. Any questions, comments? If not, would you please cast your ballot, please? That motion carries. Motion number 4, moved by Trustee Parizien, seconded by Trustee McDonald, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 220, conflict of interest, as reviewed with revisions November 27th, 2019. Trustee Parizien?
So as you can see here, we have added a little bit of information or changed some to be a little bit more specific. We have inserted for board employees is meant to clearly indicate that this policy is meant for board employees, as maybe potentially before it wasn't. Further to that, all the references in this policy pertain to the standards of practice that are part of the professional standards for the organization for which our employees belong, has all been referenced in there.
Thank you. Any further questions? Comments? If not, would you cast your ballot? You may cast your ballot now. That motion carries. Then we go to motion 5. And it's moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Cram, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 414, disposal of assets, as reviewed with revisions November 27th, 2019. Chair, I'd like to point out, or trustees, I'd like to point out that I would like to cede the chair to Trustee McPherson.
Any? Trustee McDonald, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as a result of a motion by the board, this was brought to the policy committee at our last meeting. Previous policy did not have the wording that had any discussion around covenants. Any discussion around covenant was within the procedure. So the board or the policy committee felt it was important for us to add the statement that the board reserves the right to impose a restricted covenant as a condition of sale on property that is choosing to sell on the open market. So that has been added to the existing policy. At this point, no other changes to policy 414 other than that last statement.
Any questions?
Through you, Chair, I have a lot of comments.
Just a further comment. The inclusion of the statement clarifies a 3-step procedure to the sale of property in the open market. First of all, the board would declare a property surplus to its needs. Secondly, the property, if declared surplus, will be offered for sale to all the organizations that the board is obligated by regulation to give priority to. And third, if none of the organizations under step 2 are interested in purchase, and if the board is still interested in putting the property on sale in the open market, then the board may or may not choose to attach a restricted covenant to the sale of a listed property. In past, the last episode was caught by surprise by so many people, and this puts the covenant, if it's required or if it's wanted, right in the hands of the trustees to decide as to whether they should or not. It's a political statement. It's a political issue. So the Board of Trustees, in our opinion, should then be the ones who have the opportunity to say so. Take responsibility for it.
Trustee Swan?
Well, the policy wasn't attached in the documents, or sorry, the procedure. I think we should get rid of what we called Schedule B, which bars purchasers for 99 years to operate a private school. Non-competitive clauses have a place, but if we're worried about a board for economic reasons to lose students to a private school, then I think we have to look at what we can do better as a board. Do we want to waste money on the courts to see if we're right or wrong in this decision? I mean, I don't want to waste money on that, in my opinion. Media reports say we had an offer of $350,000 for the school we just sold it in Wolford. Yet media says we sold it for $303,000. The school was built with tax dollars of all. I mean, I'm a supporter of public schools, but more than that, I support education for all.
Trustee Swan? I
Yes.
caution you. You're heading into discussion in private session.
No, I'm not. I'm citing the media. I read this all online. It was in the paper. Google it. The numbers I'm finding were online, nothing to do with private session. Is that what you're citing me on, the numbers I'm saying?
I'm just urging...
No, I appreciate that, but I'm not. I'm saying this is what I read when I Googled the sale of Wolford. So anyway, I'll go over that, but I mean I can prove that you can Google it yourself. So I'm not talking about private session, but what we're talking about is selling a surplus property, which was paid by all provincial tax dollars, not just public school parents, not Catholic school parents, people that also support private schools. And taxpayers may support privatization of schools, which is another argument, which is not one for today. But what I believe is Upper Canada District School Board prepares, and we say we prepare all students for a successful life. Not all kids fit the same model. Not all kids fit the same school. All kids need a fair chance. Why are we worried about the cost of losing a few students? Because another school, we already have to, by the province, offer it to the Catholic board. Why are we losing a few kids instead of selling it for the best offering price? And I think this policy goes against the fact that we say as Upper Canada Board, we are preparing all students for a successful life, because all students means all, and we've always said that, and that's my opinion. I am very much against the right to have a restricted covenant in regards to private schools. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify a few things. First and foremost, the mission is that of our board for our students. So all of our students under Upper Canada District School Board, our mission is not to be that across the province, but certainly the ones that are charged with us. I'll move on to the policy discussion. The policy discussion is that it's a policy discussion. We did part of our committee work is not to go into the procedure component. And yes, there was a Schedule B that is part of the procedure. And as Trustee Cram pointed out, the addition to this line, of this statement, is now putting it in the hands of trustees that we may or may not ask for a covenant. So previously, there was no place for trustees. This allows the trustees to have a discussion at some point as to whether we do or don't want to have a covenant. The comments around offering it to other boards, yes, there is a requirement. It's a legislated requirement that we have to offer it to other boards and other stakeholders that the government sees fit. And that includes municipalities. That includes some other provincial organizations, provincial ministries that fall into that criteria. So that is legislated. Once it expires through that process, then it becomes the open market sale, and it becomes available for anybody to purchase at that point based on fair market value. The statement, though, puts just the opportunity for trustees to discuss, debate, and decide whether there would or would not be a covenant on any future sales.
Trustee McAllister?
Thank you, Vice Chair. The easiest thing for me to do at this point would be to duck. And I'm not inclined to do that. So if you will bear with me for a moment. I want to acknowledge the many emails and phone calls and the visits and meetings that I've had with many of these fine folks, many of whom are or were my friends. Our society has a duty to provide an education system for each and every citizen. Our governments provide universities, colleges, elementary, secondary schools, and daycares. Why? Education, in its broadest sense, supports the common growth of individuals and society as a whole. Jim Brown, in a paper entitled The Imperfect Board Member, stated, "Governing well is no easy task. It takes knowledge, skill, and experience. It takes courage and character, and it takes teamwork in the sense of everyone bringing their unique talents and backgrounds to work together for the best interests of the people the board serves." End of quote. So, whom do we serve, and what are their best interests? That is the question. We as trustees are accountable to the people the board serves, and it has a special and unique mandate to serve all, regardless of color, creed, language, ability, status, wealth, or provenance. It's our duty for which we are accountable according to our policy 1003 to make decisions that reflect the Upper Canada District School Board focus on student achievement and its mission, bringing learning to life, enabling students to fulfill their aspiration, to ensure that an appropriate education program is available for all students in Upper Canada, to provide clear, consistent expectations that focus on successful outcomes for all students in Upper Canada, to approve measures that promote our students' well-being, to make decisions that reflect the Upper Canada District School Board's vision, mission, and values and direction. The common denominator in this policy is the Upper Canada District School Board, its students, and its communities. Some may not share that vision, mission, or strategic direction, and their right to provide their value-added provisions is certainly acceptable, commendable. However, there is a price to pay over and above that. What the mandate of public education can and should provide is the question. Supporting a public education system is and has been my goal for all my life as a teacher and as a trustee, and I take that responsibility seriously. As a trustee, I have a duty to defend and promote Lynn Public School, Front of Young Public School, Thousand Islands Elementary School, Gananoque Intermediate Secondary School, Linklater Public School, Sweets Corners Public School, Meadowview Public School, Pineview Public School, and Athens District High School. And you, my colleagues, share similar responsibility in your wards and your schools. Consequently, this amended policy, if passed, will still allow for a restricted covenant as a condition of sale of properties the Upper Canada Board is choosing to sell or on open market. It still permits a case-by-case study of each transaction by trustees. For these reasons, I support the amended the policy.
Thank you. I think competition sharpens everybody's pencils, and this board can stand to get quite a bit better at protecting rural interests. This is these folks are an example of a group that can do that, and I think we need more competition. Maybe we should offer them some kind of place within our system. Maybe they wouldn't accept that, but we need to be. I think everybody should get a chance at education, and if they don't think we're providing it to them, and other people want to, they pay their taxes, they pay for us, but above and beyond that, they feel that it's important that a particular type of education. We're seeing competition from the Chinese school down here, and from Fulford Academy, and from all these others, and I think the pedagogy of education has changed. I wish we would realize that it's somewhat moved towards smaller is not bad. And that's, so I oppose this motion.
Okay, Cram, then Schooler.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking as policy chair, not necessarily as trustee Cram right now. With the motion that's on the floor, we have three things we can do with it. We can pass it, we can defeat it, or we can amend it. If we pass it, it's as it stays. If we defeat it, we're back to where we were before. We can amend it to do what people would like to do if they don't like it. Those are the only three things we can do. You pass it, you've got what's there. You defeat it, we have made no change to the policy, we're back to where we were before. Or three, amend it now to what you want it to be.
I would like to pass an amendment, please.
Just a second. We want to hear from Trustee Schooler first, then we'll entertain the amendment.
For you, Chair, a couple of questions and a comment. First of all, did the terms as currently stated remain the same in Policy B? Okay, fair enough. And in your investigation of covenant, your discussions, was there any precedent that you drew upon that guided your discussions?
I would have to go back to, without trying to get into private, I would have to go back to a meeting that we had that we did discuss those particular kinds of things.
So I have a comment. I kind of agree with my colleague to my left, two people to my left. I really don't fear the competition. I kind of embrace it. I think that if parents are seriously looking for choice for education for their children, and they take the time to dig deeply into what the options are that are available, they can't help but be impressed with what we have to offer through public education in the schools of Upper Canada District School Board. The two videos that we saw this evening point that out very succinctly. I truly believe that what we have to offer is the best trained professional educators, the deepest set of resources that would embrace all learners, and the best facilities. I don't fear that competition. And therefore, that tells me that we don't really need that Schedule B. I do, however, agree with the fact that by passing the amendment, we do get the opportunity to take a look at each situation case by case. So on that basis, I will support the amendment.
Trustee Swan, you were making an amendment, were you?
Well, I think we are competitive, and I agree. And my amendment would be that the Upper Canada District School Board removes the restricted covenant as it pertains to private schools as a condition of sale on a property that it is choosing to sell on open market. Because I believe we can do the job and we can do it better. And so thank you.
That restricted covenant is noted in the procedure and not in the policy, which is in front of you on the table.
It does. It says the board reserves the right to impose a restricted covenant as a condition of sale on a property that's choosing to sell in the open market. So all I'm saying is that the board removes the restricted covenant as it pertains to private schools on a property. So I'm using exactly the highlighted part of the motion of the disposal of assets policy that's on the table.
There's no reference in this amendment to private schools. It is simply
I'm adding that.
restrictive covenant as a condition of sale to properties on the open market.
Okay, well, I can't see, unfortunately.
McDonald has something to say.
I was just going to point out, so although the policy committee does not review procedure, that is not our mandate. That's an administrative operational task. By adding this line, the procedures have to mirror or follow what the policy says. So the procedure cannot go above and beyond what the policy says. The policy is clearly stating that we reserve the right to impose restricted covenant as a condition of sale on property that is choosing to sell in the open market. So it is a board decision at this point if we pass this motion. So we have removed it from an administrative task to a board decision on a case by case by adding that line.
Okay. Here's Trustee McCray.
Following Trustee Swan's suggestion, perhaps after open market, we could put, with the exception of competitive education.
So,
and then the wording.
Trustee McDonald.
The legislation is very clear that we have to provide it to competitive education institutions that follow the Ministry of Education requirements, which are specified in Regulation 44498.
Come again?
Regulation 44498 specifies that we have to provide any surplus property that we have to coterminous education boards,
municipalities,
as noted in the regulation. It also includes the municipalities. It also includes some other things. It's very clear on the members on the education sector that's required. Colleges is another one that's also included.
Oh yeah, but just add on for this.
I would just like to amend it to remove the restricted covenant period. We're not even seeing policy B here. I mean...
Okay, you're making an amendment to remove the line that is highlighted in yellow?
Yes.
We have a mover.
Point of order.
Point of order.
In effect, if we vote against this motion, then that removes that line. You know, it's a moot point, is it not?
Why?
Because then we would revert, this line would not be in the existing policy.
If you remove the, sorry, Chair, if you do remove the existing line, you will have the same policy that you have now, which cause...
Okay, so then add in and remove Schedule B to be reviewed by the committee or something. And let's put this over again because I don't think it's ready because Schedule B, no one knows about. Nobody can find it. It's just, it too is a mute point.
It doesn't. Read the policy.
The difference is Schedule
That's how
B
it
is
comes
not
out.
in the policy.
That's the effect, the de facto way it comes out.
Let's keep it moving forward. Yes. Director Sliwa, thank you.
Through you, just a point of clarification that might help in the dialogue tonight. So policy 414 in its current state is silent as it relates to any kind of restricted covenant. Procedure 414.1 has in it as a direction from the board at the time in 2004 to 2006, sometime in that timeline, staff developed that procedure to include a restricted covenant when the potential purchaser was viewed as a competitor. Schedule B is part of the real estate agreement that any purchaser would engage that reflects that restricted covenant found in that procedure. So walking this back then, what's before the board tonight is what you heard from the presentation through Trustee McDonald on this particular policy, and that is, number one, moving the visibility about whether or not a restricted covenant is desired by the board into its own policy, so the board exercises the discretion about whether or not that kind of practice is the board's position rather than an administrative action to a sale. Number two, is that, as you heard this evening, if the board decides to proceed with the amendment to the policy, then the administrative procedure would be changed, and Schedule B would or would not exist based on the will of the board when there is a public sale of a property to determine whether or not there would be a restricted covenant. If the board chose to, on the public market, sell the property and not place a restricted covenant, then Schedule B would not exist in the real estate deal. So I think it's really important that the board is following that sort of sequence, knowing that what's on its table is what's within the board's domain as a governance board, and its policy orientation to how it chooses to respond to public sale of property versus what would be in the procedure that would be adjusted or aligned based on the board's direction and its policy, and not the legal a sales agreement and the schedules attached to that legal sale that's reflective on the board's current administrative procedure. So I'll turn that back to you, Mr. Chair, just to make sure that was the proper recap of what's before the board.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yep.
I have a question.
Okay. I got one on my right, one on my left, and then we'll go to Trustee Swan.
Did I hear you say, Director Sliwa, that policy supersedes procedure?
Through you, the board's policy is the basis in which the how-to, what the administration is supposed to do, is governed and directed.
What I'm hearing then is that if this were taken out and we would revert to the way it was before, well, the way it was before would change because it's not in agreement with this, because it's procedure that follows a change in a policy. Now, if it was not in the policy before, is it in effect only because it was put in procedure back in 2005 or whenever?
Director Sliwa?
Here through you, the challenge before the board is that the board's policy is silent on the covenant, and in the administrative procedure, it's present. So through the policy committee is attempting to take ownership of that decision at the board level rather than to delegate it to administration.
Okay, Trustee McAllister?
I just want to point out one thing, is that Trustee McCrae is not the only one who wants to protect small schools. I want to protect Pineview, Lynn Public, Meadowview, Front of Young, all of which are in very close proximity to one of the private schools that we were talking about. If we take a look at the life of a student in our elementary schools, junior K to grade 6, that is 8 years. Approximately, each year a student is funded to the board by the province in the amount of approximately $16,000. $16,000 times 8, $128,000. That's only for one student in the course of their lifetime in Pineview, for example. I don't want to lose any students. I don't think I can afford to lose any students.
Through you, Chair.
Trustee Swan?
I can't afford to lose students, and I have small schools too, but it's not about losing students, Chair. Well, you're Chair now, but Chair McAllister, it's about kids and getting them an education and getting them a fit in a school. And if another school is doing a better job than us, then we have to step up and do better. And I am against this covenant. It's about kids. It's about kids in our society. It's about kids in the province and all kids. And that's just my opinion. And I want this removed. But I also want Schedule B removed because none of us were aware of it that weren't trustees back in 2004 and 2005. And it's not available on our internet. It's not available anywhere. So thank you.
McDonald?
I think we've had some rigorous debate. I would like to call the question.
Thank you. We're now going to call the vote.
It disappeared.
May I just have a question on clarification of what the vote counts for so everyone knows what they're voting for?
You're voting for it as presented in your disposal of assets policy 414. What is simply on the screen here, or I assume on your screen at home? Pardon. The vote carries.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I want to
thought-
speak to the next item.
Okay, I thought I was going to get a
Sorry.
hot seat. Okay, moving on to boundary review crest, item 1201. Okay, and that would be Susan Rudders is presenting. Thank you.
I'm presenting to you tonight to provide you with an analysis of the request to adjust the Lynn Public School boundary. On November 13th, we have perfect. On November 13th, the board heard a delegation presentation from Ms. Jamie LaSalle. And in her presentation, Ms. LaSalle requested that the board consider making a boundary change to include the area shaded in pink on the map shown in this slide in the Lynn Public School attendance boundary. This area is currently part of the Commonwealth Public School regular program boundary, and it's a combination of the Westminster Public School EFI boundary and Commonwealth Public School EFI boundary, as we're phasing in the early French immersion program at Commonwealth Public School. So the scope of the review, at the meeting of November 13th, the board requested that senior administration assess the impact of the proposed boundary change and bring recommendations to the board regarding the boundary change request. And the scope of the review includes consideration for the immediate impact of students currently living within the affected area, the immediate impact of school enrollment and available pupil space in affected schools, the long-term implications as related to future boundary discussions, and the long-term implications related to transportation costs. So to recap, with regards to regular program school boundaries, schools in the area indicated in green are currently included in the Commonwealth Public School regular program boundary, and the request, if granted, would cause this area to now be included into the Lynn Public School regular program boundary. In terms of early French immersion boundaries, this same area, students who attend early French immersion instruction within the area in question right now either attend Westminster from grades 2 to 6 or Commonwealth for kindergarten and grade 1. And that is the reason why there are 2 elementary schools represented as part of the EFI program boundary in this section. Commonwealth is phasing in an EFI program as part of the direction that was formed in the last boundary review process. So when this phase-in process is complete over the next several years, all EFI students from the area in question will attend Commonwealth Public School. So as I mentioned, the requested boundary change results in a potential impact on students who attend early French immersion. And as stated in that previous slide, the EFI students in this area attend or will attend Commonwealth Public School as per the last boundary review. The EFI students who are within the Lynn regular program boundary currently attend Vanier Public School. So if the proposed boundary change is approved, and if we follow our established practice of aligning our regular and our EFI program boundaries, then the EFI students in the area in question would attend Vanier Public School for EFI and not Commonwealth. So it may be helpful to understand the various schools attended by students currently living in the area of the proposed boundary change. Currently, there are 2 students who are attending Commonwealth Public School in the regular program. These students receive transportation to Commonwealth Public School as their home school. There are 12 regular program students attending Lynn Public School as out-of-boundary students. Of these, 5 were approved out-of-boundary transfers with no transportation provided. 2 have childcare within the Lynn Public School boundary and are therefore eligible for transportation from the childcare address. 5 students are attending Lynn Public School with the closest stop bus transportation opportunity for the 2019-20 school year. In addition, from the chart, you'll see that there are 16 EFI students attending Westminster Public School as their home school in grades 2 to 6, while the EFI is slowly being phased in at Commonwealth. And you'll see that there are 6 students attending Toniata Public School from this specific area. No transportation is being provided, so parents are providing transportation themselves, or these students potentially have an in-boundary caregiver address. The secondary schools, as you'll see, in Brockville currently enjoy open boundary, and so students attending both TIS and BCI are doing so with transportation provided within this area. There's 1 student who is attending South Grenville, and we understand that that student provides their own transportation. In terms of space utilization at our Brockville schools, all of the schools fall within a range of 70 to 90% of space utilization. So the proposed boundary change would not have negative impact on space availability at Lynn Public School. So to summarize the current potential impact of the requested boundary change, space exists at Lynn Public School to accommodate any foreseeable enrollment changes as a result of this boundary change request. There's no impact on secondary school attendance currently for TIS or BCI as a result of this requested boundary change. With an approved boundary change, however, 12 regular program students in the affected area would become eligible for transportation service to Lynn Public School. Further study of the associated costs of that transportation would be required to understand the financial impact. With the unapproved boundary change, there would be 2 Commonwealth regular program students who would no longer qualify for transportation service to Commonwealth Public School, as they would become out of boundary. And so unless we were making accommodations for that, they would need to change schools, or parents would need to assume responsibility for transportation. And with an approved boundary change, should we continue the practice that we have on our board of aligning our early French immersion boundaries with regular program boundaries, EFI students currently attending Commonwealth Public School in Westminster would no longer be in zone for that school. They would in fact be in zone for a new home school for EFI, which would be Vanier. And while we might potentially maintain their attendance at that school to the end of their current journey, we have data that tells us that we have approximately 16 to 18 students consistently in the EFI program from that area over the past 4 or 5 years. And so we can anticipate that there would be that many students moving forward as new enrollments came on, new children came to kindergarten, who would be moving to EFI for Vanier Public School from the beginning of their journey. And so transportation costs associated with this change of location for incoming EFI students, while still potentially maintaining transportation for current EFI students, that would need to be examined and determined moving forward should this boundary request be implemented. In terms of future impact, potential impact of the requested boundary change, should we continue to practice the practice of aligning our early French immersion boundaries, Vanier will continue to see increased enrollment in EFI. Commonwealth will recognize lower EFI enrollments, And we would want to look at the long-term impact on space at Vanier Public School in light of its unique open concept configuration. So there is potentially space currently in terms of the percentage of space being used, but it has a unique build in the sense that it's very open concept. And so we would want to look at the impact of the open concept in terms of our ability to maximize the use of space in the school for classroom programming. The transportation costs as a result of aligning those EFI boundaries are unknown at this time and would require some further study. And program and school boundaries for the anticipated new K-12 Brockville school have yet to be determined. So it's really difficult for us to determine at this point the future impact of the proposed boundary change. And worthy of consideration is the impact that we may have on public confidence should we implement what may be perceived as a contradictory boundary decision moving forward within a period of several years in the geographic area of Brockville. So to make a decision on a boundary change now, to revisit that decision in the context of a larger conversation in several years' time may cause some angst for folks in our communities. So at this time, in light of the information gathered in the scope of the review, we offer the following summary and recommendations. While space exists at Lynn to accommodate the regular program students who live within the area of the boundary change, there are implications for students from the same area who participate in early French immersion programming, and for those few students who currently attend the regular program at Commonwealth. And so we feel it would be best to provide opportunities for consultation with families who would be impacted. Further study will be required to determine the long-term effect on pupil accommodation as a result of an anticipated increased EFI population at Vanier Public School, should this boundary change be implemented. And with the anticipated construction of a new K-6 elementary school within Brockville, a larger boundary and program discussion will be necessary within the next 2 to 3 years. So limiting boundary changes in the short term, we believe will help bring clarity and consistency to this future dialogue. So for these reasons, it's the recommendation of senior staff that request for boundary change be deferred to be included as part of a larger discussion anticipated in planning for the new Brockville school.
Trustee McAllister has a motion prepared.
I have a motion, it's moved by myself and seconded by Trustee Cram, that the boundary review request be referred to the director and the senior team for further review with a report to board on January the 22nd, 2020. Can I speak to that now?
Certainly.
I was going to ask you a question. Does that align with what we're looking at for Glengarry as well? That timeline?
There was no timeline.
Oh.
Anyway, the issue for me is this. I respect the study and the recommendations of the senior staff, you, Superintendent Rudders. This is a very complicated issue. And I'm not. It's a chicken and egg scenario in a way. Is it a boundary issue or a busing service? Is it a busing service causes a boundary issue? I have concerns about that. The complexity of the issue. Frankly, whatever we decide has to make sense, and I'm having a difficult time making sense of it. Our paramount concern has to be the safety of students we serve, regardless of where they go to school. And for that reason, I'm asking for, while it's true that a boundary review, given the explanation by Superintendent Rudders, could take 2 or 3 years, I believe that there might be some interim solutions in the short term while we await the longer term result. So therefore, I'm asking that this be referred to the director and the senior team for a review with a report to the board on 2000.
Comment from the table? John.
Thank you. I worry that for these folks that this is these small schools like this one are geographically outside the city. These are the sort of things that it's no doubt a good school. That's why the parents want to send their children there, because it has a character. If we we're to the east, to me, it's maybe the thin edge of the wedge that they'll end up like we are down there and be having no school. And I think that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. Not looking after these individual schools when we're worrying about this big school that we want to build to bring these all Commonwealth and others into it. We're getting away from the importance of the individual school. And that's where our competitiveness lies, I believe. But we've got a motion, so I guess we'll have to vote on that.
Any further comments? Trustee McDonald.
Just only timing. I think we have a motion later on where we're actually changing that meeting. So can we just say the last meeting in January, the second meeting in January?
Thank you.
Further comments?
Amendment last.
Yeah, it's further down on the agenda.
I have a comment, if I may.
Certainly, go ahead, Trustee Swan.
And I concur with a lot of the comments here, but the one thing I think is, in a temporary move, can we not have John Danaher or Chair McAllister go to Steo and make this busing safer for these kids going to Lynn in the meantime, until we do a boundary review? Thank you.
Director Sliwa.
At this time, that would, contrary to policy 120 that the board has, which states the process really open to the board at this time is the boundary review versus a service adjustment.
Okay. Get that, Trustee Swan?
Yes. So do I need a motion to put forward that children on, and I don't remember the road going into Lynn, crossing the main highway 29, are allowed a bus? I mean, I thought we could always kind of do this on the side, so I'm a bit lost here.
The request is for a boundary change. It is not for a diversion of a bus.
No, I understand that, and that's not going to happen right away. But I'm concerned about the busing of the kids or them walking across the 29. So I don't know what we can do as a safety thing there.
Perhaps I could seek clarification from the director in that, have they followed the procedure through Steel already on this issue?
Chair, through you, I'll confirm that with Superintendent Rudders. My comment was safety matters as a regular course of practice for the board is always referred to STAO. And the reason for that is that they have the criteria for evaluating pedestrian safety, and it would not have fallen into the purview of the board. So, Superintendent Rudders can advise whether or not that was part of the process. Or to your specific question about whether the request has run through the channel of going to the consortium first before it landed on the superintendent's desk.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am aware that the request initiated with STAO because there was a change in the transportation provided in terms of the location of the closest stop. I do believe that Mrs. Sell approached STAO requesting a review of that, so she issued a concern. It was reviewed, and it was determined that the route of the bus, my understanding is the route of the bus had changed this year, and so that truly was the closest stop, the different place than it was last year. So that process took place. I can't comment at this time whether or not has since then been any kind of a safety review or what the parameters for that.
That answer your question, Trustee Swan?
Yes, that's the start. I think it's a follow-up point for the trustee in that area. Thank you.
Further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. I will call the vote. Motion carried. And I will gladly relinquish the chair to the chair.
Thank you. You sure you don't want more of this?
Well, if I didn't have friends before I started, I certainly don't now.
Item 1202 is the Upper Canada District School Board Culture Survey, Recommendation 6, the annual graduation rate. And I turn this over to you to introduce your team, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, trustees around the table will recall that out of the Accountability Framework Committee came a series of 8 different concrete actions that required staff follow-up. Some have a very quick timeline. Some will bring us into the spring and late spring of 2020. The reports before you tonight, recommendation number 6 out of the culture survey, and recommendation number 8. All these recommendations were passed by the board in June 2019, and it's our pleasure to report back on these 2 items, recommendation 6 and recommendation 8. It begins, Mr. Chair, with recommendation number 6 and our annual graduation rate. I'll turn that over to Superintendent Coombs.
Thank you, Director, and through you, Mr. Chair, wherever you may be. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. I really do, to be here tonight and report on the progress towards our 90% goal of graduation by June of 2020. If I were to use a horse racing metaphor, I would say we're at the quarter pole, and that we have just completed midterm report cards have come in, and we are busily crunching the numbers across the system, including at the central office, to our success rate and our projections going forward. Just as a very quick refresher, again, our original mandate was to increase the graduation rate by 2% each year, culminating in a 90% graduation rate by June. That is this coming June. Just again, a refresher from last year. We track our cohorts based on the grade 9 students that are with us at the beginning of September of that year. And so in the June 2019 cohort, we started in these students started with us in grade 9 in September of 2014. We started with 2,068 of them. And whenever a student leaves the province or the country, they are removed from our cohort. They don't count. However, if they leave our board and go to one of our a coterminous board, or if they simply just move to another city in Ontario, they remain on our cohort. So regardless of how those students do, whether they go to another school in another board or another city, they still are part of our cohort. You'll see our projected graduation rate from last year as being 86.6. I say projected because A, we haven't heard from the official number from the Ministry of Education, and B, we don't know how those 177 kids have done who have left us. So this is and in fact, you know, for a lot of those numbers, we could put an asterisk beside them because the numbers are very fluid in that we learn every week, every now and then, we learn a student, oh, that student actually went to Alberta, or that student actually left and went to the States, or that student actually did graduate from the coterminous board. So we are projecting, we do believe we are well over 86% from last year's fifth year cohort, which is an increase over last year's. But again, we have a ways to go to hit 90% by 2020. So how are we doing for next year? For this year, for June of 2020. We're tracking 1,949 students who began with us in September of 2015. Of those, we have 26 confirmed that have left the province. Our adjusted cohort, that's what our 90% will be based on, is 1,923 students. 132 have left the board. So of those 1,791, we need 1,731 to graduate with to reach our 90% graduation rate. So we don't know what our grad rate is going to be. We will have our first best guess in early December, coming up in the next week or so, because we are going to be able to get our first semester numbers. But we have had success with a couple of new measures that we are undergoing right now, which I'll be outlining in a minute. Really, we've talked about this going forward. We established very early a couple of years ago that we really do need to make sure, number one, we find the kids from the cohort and we know where they are. And I'm a little bit remiss, and Mr. Chair, with your permission, I do want to introduce one of our guests here tonight. This is Karen Whalen. Karen was the original member of our central grad team. Karen is an office assistant. I call her my data guru, and she was first charged with digging into the data and finding the kids. So what schools are they at? Did they leave us? If they left us and went to another school board, did they drop out, and can we re-engage them? So she has been really key in helping us establish our numbers. She's also been very key in giving schools their target lists. And so she's the one who generates the central cohort data. She then finds out where those schools are, where those students are who are still with us in the board. And she sends that data through the principal and to the student success teams in all those schools so that they can intervene. This is really important going forward because we are also tracking not just our fifth year cohort, those that are graduating in fifth year of 2020, but our fourth year and our third year and our second year and our first year, because this is an ongoing issue. So some of our new priorities and initiatives for this coming year. Number one is establishing a district model of school-based grad coaches. One of the things we did last year, you'll recall, is that we established a central grad coach. We call them graduation coaches. These are learning partners who go and find these students and meet with them wherever they may be. Sometimes it's in a Tim Hortons, sometimes it's at their kitchen table. But they find them and they ask them, what can we do to reintegrate you into school, and how can we build a pathway to graduation? We quickly realized that although we had some success with that, unless we hired 100 of them, we weren't going to have systemic change and systemic movement. And so last year, we hired key grad coaches in the areas where our biggest pain points, if I can use that term, are. So Cornwall, Smith Falls, Brockville, and the Lanark area, we have put site-based graduation coaches, and we've been working with them over the past 10 to 12 weeks so that they can work with the students that are in front of them there. We've been using our centralized grad coaches to work with those school-based grad coaches and align the school support teams. And so while we help train and assist those site-based grad coaches, we also learn from them. And so we go to their sites and we ask them, what are you seeing? What strategies are you applying in your school with your cohorts that are working, and how can we drive those strategies and that process across the system? We're also enhancing the current capacity of student success teachers, our SSTs, in all of our schools to support students involved in a wide range of learning experiences. And so we are really looking at the opportunities that those kids can have earlier and earlier to obtain the cohort in different ways, including e-learning, in-class, and experiential learning. We're also identifying and supporting approaches to differentiated instruction and assessment in our secondary schools. And I don't think I think it's great that we also talked earlier today about the SIPSA and BIPSA, because this is a team approach. We can't just depend upon a few heroic people in some of our schools to try to get to 90%. If we are going to get to 90%, and perhaps more importantly, stay there and sustain that going forward, we're going to need systemic approach at the instructional level. To that end, we also are looking at trialing a kindergarten to grade 2 strategy to centralize the student data as we are doing at secondary, so that we're looking at the primary kids and creating a cohort list of identification of those students that are at risk as young as grade 4 years old and 5 years old. And also something new that we are exploring this year is looking at the elementary school learning skills. So those are things like time on task, paying attention, working with others, being cooperative. Those kind of things really drive academic achievement. We want to see if focusing on those learning skills earlier with self-regulation, and certainly through our wellness presentation earlier today, if that can have an impact on enabling those students when they get to grade 9, which is the cohort we grab them in their secondary cohort, that they are ready to graduate. I just want to talk a little bit more about school-based grad coaches. This is where they are on the right-hand side. We have TR Leger-based grad coaches in Prescott and Cornwall. That's where a large number of our fifth-year cohort kids end up. And indeed, of all the fifth-year cohort students that we are tracking right now, about 50% of them are in TR Leger. And so we know we've got to go to TR Leger to support those students. We also have them in Smith Falls, Almont, Cornwall Collegiate, St. Lawrence, and Thousand Island. We asked the principals last year, if you're going to appoint a grad coach, this is the kind of person you need. They need to be student-oriented, that goes without saying. They also have to be not easily discouraged, because a lot of these students, when they get into their fifth year, they haven't necessarily had a great experience in school. And so they may not react to you positively at the first go. So you may have to go back to them and invite them into a conversation about re-engaging in school. Certainly non-judgmental. These kids come from every walk of life, and they've had many different experiences, some of them pretty problematic. And so you have to meet them where they are. We also need people who are team-oriented and extremely creative, because like I said, we need to learn from them in the same way we are helping them learn about serving students. When we had our grad coaches, we had our first training session and meeting in September. We said, here's what we want you to do. We are going to provide you a target list of students in a cohort. You need to help us find them. And once you find them, you have to go to them, and we have to give them an opportunity to see a pathway that's personalized going forward. We conduct a risk analysis on an ongoing basis. We update that risk analysis as we get more data. Our next update will be next week as we take in our midterm data. We develop a plan. Each student is different, and every plan will be different. This is the personalized instruction that we need to at every level of our system, K to 12. So we learn a lot from these kids because we can develop personalized plans, but we have to be able to do that earlier and earlier. Tracking and monitoring is absolutely critical. We document our progress, we follow up. Be a pest? Yeah, we're making sure that just because they're not necessarily responding right away, that we are getting back to them and saying, you know, I sent you an update a couple of days ago. How about we get together? How about we grab a coffee? Don't be resilient and continue on. And I like the time. This is from one of our grad coaches. Out of sight should be on your mind. Just because they're not in front of you, they better be on your action-oriented list. And finally, connect and collaborate. We really are a learning community. I had a question the other day. One of the staff members asked me, you know, what are you going to do when you hit 90%? And my answer was 91, and sustaining it, moving forward. Habits of success. These are things that we have learned and that we are using to discuss with our student success and our administrators at all schools. The idea of knowing your learner, you heard that earlier from Shelley and from Amanda and from Bill. Knowing your learner is really critical. Removing barriers and personalizing. So I talked about some of these students having really bad experiences. Sometimes they left school in a fairly dramatic and not necessarily positive way. They've had a bad experience in school. So we have to be able to say, we can help you get to that next level. We're going to personalize a journey for you. A really quick example, we had a student at one of our TR Leger sites. On our list, Aaron found this student, informed the grad coach at a particular TR Leger site. That grad coach found that student, met with her at TR Leger at Tim Hortons, where, by the way, she is a assistant manager. She has a child. She only had 6 credits. She was 18 years old with 6 credits. And the grad coach, and she said, you know, this is wonderful. I really would like to get my high school diploma. It would mean a lot to me and my parents. But you know what? I've only got 6 credits. It's too far away. Maybe when I'm in my 20s, maybe later, maybe when my child's older. And this grad coach said, well, you know, we do have prior learning assessments. So we can look at everything you have done over the course of the last couple of years. You have been teaching yourself. You've been educating yourself. We can give you, we will do a prior learning assessment. We can give you credits. That person is going to be graduating this June. it's a huge win for us, and it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have someone go to her and say, I have a personal journey for you that can get you to your credit, to your diploma. And finally, persist. And we need that at every level, starting in kindergarten. Being invitational, reaching out. We keep saying dropping out of school should be incredibly hard, like trying to leave. If you ever try to leave a cell phone plan or cancel your cable, it's difficult. Right? They will send you to their customer retention department where they will offer you things. It should be that hard, at least, to drop out of school. We need to go to them and bring them back. So this is all about system improvement over time. We have system grad coaches, we have school-based grad coaches, we have school success teams in every school K-12. We need to learn from each other to improve the system. I've used the metaphor of pushing intervention strategies upstream. So in a lot of ways, a lot of these grad coaches are catching kids at the bottom of the waterfall, or attempting to. We have to snatch them out of the stream before they get over the edge. And that's what this project is really all about. We have lots of challenges, but we are seeing through the data specific pain points where we need to intervene very quickly. In grade 9, we track very rigorously the students who get 8 credits at the end of grade 9. That's a key milestone. And province-wide, about 87% of kids get all 8 credits at the end of grade 9. In Upper Canada, we're at 87. So it's pretty good. We're with the rest of the board, the rest of the province. In grade 10, we slipped 3% behind. In grade 11, we slipped 6%. So we have that. We know that by grade 10, in that grade 10 and 11 transition is huge for us. So we know we need to intervene at that grade 10, 11 level just as rigorously to make sure those grade 9 kids who get 8 credits by grade 9, we need to make sure they have 16 by the end of grade 10. We need to make sure they have 23 by the end of grade 11. That level of urgency has to carry through. So it's that kind of data and insights which are going to be necessary if we're going to hit 90% and if we're going to sustain 90% going forward. I look forward to bringing further updates as we get more data throughout the year. I thank you for this time, and I'm certainly open to any questions.
Thank you. That's a pet peeve of mine. This is a goal that we as a board set for ourselves. 90% is not a provincial goal. It's ours. So my question to you is this. We're using provincial criteria to measure that success. Essentially, we are ignoring the ones that take 6, 7, 8 years to achieve their graduation. And yet, until they turn 21, they remain our students. So, given that this is our goal, I would like to see a sidebar that shows me what all our students are actually achieving. And I realize that the further down the road you get into years 6 and 7, you're probably going to have to buy a lot of coffee. But I think that because it's our goal, we should get to measure it on our students our way. And that's not a question, it's a comment. Thank you.
Trustee Denner.
Chair, possibly you, Dave. The school-based people that are involved in this program, are they part of the school staffing, or are they part of, and how many would you, so you have 6 or 7 that are specifically focused on schools. How many would you have other than that in assistant grad coaches?
So through you, Mr. Chair, have 2 learning partners which are centrally based. So one goes east, one goes west. We use Highway 43 kind of as a dividing line. That was our initial foray into this. We now have 7 grad coaches which are in those sites which are 4. And those 7 are, and we chose those sites again because those are the sites where the majority of our students who we are working with in the 5th year and 4th year cohort, that's where they reside. And certainly Smith Falls Brockville and Cornwall would be our schools where if we did a heat map of wherever those students are, that's where they are. The next level of that, though, is training for our student success teams and administrators in all of our secondary schools. So whatever insights that we develop from this, that we then push down across the system. And so this is a pilot. This is an extension of the pilot project from a couple of years ago. But we are anxious to see where this does go going forward.
Not questions. Didn't miss you. I think it's a great idea. I'm just trying to figure out the resources involved. So there are 9 grad coaches in the system.
That's correct.
Any questions, Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. We have this year, I believe, in the cohort, we have 1791 UCDSB students. Where do the students fit in that come into our board from other boards? Do they come out of that 1791 or are they not included in the 17?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. If those students come to us after November 1st, after the capture date, they are not included in our cohort. However, if they come to us in grade 9 from out of province or out of country, they are included in our graduation. So, for example, if somebody transfers from Alberta in March of that year into grade 9, they're included in our cohort. If it's after November 1st, they're not included in our cohort. If they come to us from Ontario.
Second question. Because I sit on the SAL committee and you see all of the students who are coming in are your difficult students. Is there any correlation done between this group and the SAL group to try to bring those students on board?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and we've had some coordinating conversations with Superintendent Rudders, who sits on that committee, obviously as her responsibility, and TR Leger. So that, and it's very interesting that a lot of those SAL students, we used to think of SAL as almost like a way of keeping, like a holding, keeping them in a holding pattern, that we keep some connection to them. We give them a little bit of school. We're now thinking, you know, a lot of those students are working. And a lot of those students can get co-op credits at earlier ages. We have had some changes to the co-op curriculum in Ontario, which does allow us to look at expectations, not just time. We also have paid co-op. And so ears perk up whenever we talk about paid co-op with a lot of these students. So there are ways that we can still get credits for SAL students. Now, there are some SAL students that have significant challenges, and we are, mental health challenges, and we are looking after them, but we can re-engage them as quickly as possible.
Thank you. I find the definition for the school-based grad coach sounds very much like a good teacher. My question is a teacher's certificate required to be a grad coach?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, these are teachers in our system, correct.
Just a comment through you, Chair. I've been really impressed both with your presentation and with the BIPSA presentation on how staff uses data to dig deeper into how we're doing and how our students are doing, and then to come up with strategies to try and move students along. So I think it's a strength of our system that we're able to have that analytical approach to how we're doing, and then to use it in a way to reach that 90%. I
have one question for you, Superintendent Coombs. How do we track and still count those students in the cohort who have left the board for whatever reason? But they still count in our calculation, right?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. You're correct that those students that have left us still count. The first year, we spent a lot of time, and I know that Aaron is going to be smiling back there, calling our coterminous board offices and saying, we want to give you a list of kids that we think are with you. Could you give us that information? We spent a lot of time trying to track them, and we were really engaged. We were wondering if they left us, went to the coterminous board, and then dropped out. That'd be a huge win if we could get them back. We recognized pretty early that was taking us a lot of time, The other boards were not necessarily forthcoming. They were concerned with privacy concerns and understandably a little bit concerned of why we were asking these questions. We are focusing on the kids we have. We really do, and I think I've mentioned this before, those students that leave us don't graduate at an 80% or 90% level. They graduate at a 63 to a 67% level. So we can kind of estimate based upon that what we think our graduation rate is going to be. But it is something that we have told our administrators, that when you do have a student who's thinking of going to another board, it wouldn't be a bad idea to simply slip in that you know that those that stay with us graduate at a much higher rate than those who leave. We would love to have your child. Thank you.
Trustees, I am mindful of time. We have a private session yet, and we have 12:03, 12:04, special motion can go quickly. The director's award can go quickly. Can we do 12:03 in 10 minutes? We don't need a motion until 10, right? Right? How long do you need, Trustee Hobbs, or Superintendent Hobbs?
Just kidding, right? I'll give you a run. You can just cut me off when you've had enough.
Okay. I hate to do this to you because I know you've prepared, but
Oh, it's just taking you very quickly from a big, huge idea to something that is really kind of a small experiment. So we're bringing you a pilot project that we conducted last year, and Superintendent Ferguson and I worked on this together. The way we're going to work this is I'll talk to you sort of about the pilot project, and when it comes time to explaining how all the underlying technology works, Ron's going to jump in and explain all of it. So with regard to background, so back in June, you received a report outlining the results of the UCDSB Culture Survey. And then we agreed to come back and provide a report this month talking to you about this 4-school pilot program we put together to look at how we could actually sort of balance student workload. Students were talking about the notion that they were experiencing a pileup of assignments at certain times of the year, and that was a major driver of stress. So we were trying to figure out how can we actually use some tools we've got at our disposal to address that. So again, kind of a small idea taken on as an experiment in a modest way. So the problem that we encountered is that students reporting their stress levels increase when their assignments are due in multiple classes around the same time. Like oftentimes at the end of the semester where their culminating assignments are all sort of come at the same day or in the same couple days. The theory for us was that the reason why this happens is because teachers don't know what other teachers are assigning and when. So if we could just make that information visible to them, they had the information to know when kids' assignments were due in all their classes, they could actually then work to spread them out. So the strategy we employed was to just use technology that we have available. So all of you, all of our staff, all of our students have Office 365 calendars. Parents even have a view of their children's calendars. And so if we use those calendars for teachers to drop assignment due dates in the calendars, kids can see it, parents can see it, teachers can see what's due across the entire grade. Then they can have conversations about how to level things out and move things around to lessen the stress load on students. So the technology that we put in place is there's 3 parts to it. So teachers use their laptops that we've given them as a board or their personal devices with their calendars, just like you've got. They can record the due dates for their assignments for their class, and they can, quote unquote, send those due dates to students. Teachers can look at a grade level calendar to see what other teachers have assigned things and on what date. So it'll very quickly become apparent when you look at all of the classes in grade 9 that, wow, we've all got a test on the same day and maybe we can move things around a little bit. Students can use either board-owned computers or devices or their own personal devices, which we automatically configure for Office 365 when they join the board's Wi-Fi. So when they come into school and they want to get Facebook, they have to join the board's Wi-Fi. And when they join the board's Wi-Fi, put in their username and password, our system automatically configures their their phone or whatever to receive email and set up a calendar for them. And then anytime a teacher puts something or a student puts something in their calendar on their personal device, parents can see it through My Family Room. So we've integrated all these three things together, so one act of just adding, a teacher adding something to their calendar appears in all these places. And that's kind of the theory. So the pilot test that we conducted occurred at Smiths Falls, District Collegiate, North Dundas, Almont, and Charland between January and June 2019. So we provided teacher and student training. So Tanya Mason, who was a teacher who worked in the IT department, did a series of PD Day presentations, staff meetings, school visits, one-to-one sessions. We actually developed a whole series of resources, including PowerPoint, a series of videos, a series of template letters to provide support to parents, and Ask UC Knowledge articles, which are sort of a big database of how-to resources that we have. We conducted pre and post pilot surveys with both students and staff at the pilot sites to see how they were feeling about the stress level and assignment workload and the technology before the pilot, and then again after the pilot. So just to give you a jump right to the results. So in terms of the student surveys, 30% of the students were comfortable with using the Outlook calendar before the training. So only a third knew what calendar was. I can speak for my own daughter. Like she was amazed this year when she went away to university and finally heard about this calendar thing that she's had on her phone, oddly enough, since her dad's been CIO for 15 years. We asked, did the calendar approach help you plan out your work? And so what you see there is some bars. A score of 1 is no, basically, and score of 5 is absolutely yes. It was super helpful. And so we got actually pretty good scores from the students who participated, saying that actually did make a difference, having reminders for assignments automatically coming up and those kinds of things. A lot of times, kids are used to using Snapchat and Instagram, not so used to using some of the tools that we become accustomed to in the world of work. So we're trying to teach them authentic tools that they would encounter outside the school. With regard to teacher survey results, 69% of teachers were comfortable with using Outlook Calendar prior to the pilot, but 43% of them didn't know that we had set up class lists for their students so they could communicate with their entire class using an email distribution list. They didn't know they could use that to actually send calendar events to their students. And so just not aware that they could apply it in an academic setting. 89% of the teacher participants tried the system at least once, but only 21% used it consistently throughout the pilot. Among consistent users, some of the survey results showed they had a strong willingness to continue using the system. They had positive feelings about how efficient it was to use the tools, so they didn't feel like it added to their workload significantly. They didn't find there were many technical barriers to the use of the tools, and they also recognized the potential to not just balance workload, but coordinate cross-curricular instruction. I just highlight that because they were saying, wow, this isn't, if I can see what all the grade 9 teachers are doing, it's not just useful for me to be able to move tests so that they don't line up on the same day, but I can now start actually integrating some of the work that we're doing in our class with another teacher in school if I have an idea what they're up to. So some of the comments from principals, students who used it told us they like receiving due date. Principals told us that students who use it told us they like receiving due date alerts to their phone Outlook calendars that help them manage their time better. Principals reflected that teachers who used it told us they like the ability to view the calendars to not only plan their own classes' work, but co-curricular as well. Main office staff liked the one-stop access to academic programs. So school secretaries could look in and see what was going on in the whole school from an academic standpoint very quickly. Teachers who regularly use the shared calendars reported that it was helpful to visually see what other teachers are assigning students, as expected. And students of these teachers appreciated being able to use their phone. So it's what we're trying to do now is we used to trundle kids all down to the computer lab to look at their email or their calendar, but they're so used to using their personal devices. What we're trying to do is get to an actual academically or kind of a relevant way of using their devices in the school to manage their workload. And then a barrier, I would say, was really the introduction of calendars and the commitment of staff to use it moving forward. So one of the things that we're seeing is that this only works if everyone's using it. And what we found is that kind of culture, that inconsistency was a problem, because if you want to know what's going on in grade 9 and only one teacher out of 5 or 6 is using it, it becomes very difficult to use it as intended. So that broad commitment was an issue. I might have missed a slide. Did I, Lisa?
Parents view.
There we go. Oh, no. There we go. Oh, the parent view. There we go. So we did actually talk to some parents too. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side, that screenshot, is all parents that are on My Family Room. And we have about 17,000 parents registered for My Family Room right now. So anything that is in the student's calendar that either the teacher has put there, the student has put there, and even parents can put things in their own kids' calendars, shows up in the My Family mobile app. So they would get, parents would get a view on the mobile app or on a website of all the things that are due in their kids' calendar. So what we're seeing is that we've heard from people that we would like to see more families on My Family Room. I like that the events that I place on the calendar goes to the student and their parents. I think this is a wonderful tool. As a parent, I couldn't see things in My Family Room entered for my daughter. I think it will not work to its potential unless all teachers use it. So what you're seeing sometimes is that some teachers are using it, some aren't. And then I think the third bullet here really kind of gets to the heart of the cultural sort of mindset that we sometimes bump into, which is, hey, you know, if we're doing all this to help manage students' workload and spread out the workload, how is this teaching them to be independent and resilient in the university world that they're going to? And so that to me is like a mindset kind of and a mindset kind of barrier that we get at, where sometimes there's a view that, you know, if it's difficult for students, that's a hurdle that actually teaches them to get over things, right? And so we're kind of taking the opposite tack here, which is if we can help people manage their workload, let's help them. So just a summary of the pilot results in terms of successes. Among the teachers who use the service consistently, the potential for improved planning and workload balancing was recognized. Very few technical barriers. Teachers seemed to resonate with students, especially after the supports were provided, like training. And the few parents that we interacted with on this subject appreciated visibility into their children's workload. Barriers were that cultural mindset, which I touched on, getting staff to use the calendar broadly and consistently, recognition that the technology solution may not work for all students. So some have a need for or a preference for a paper type solution. And there are some technical refinements as expected that teachers passed on that would help with ease of use. So the conclusion that we have is we have technologies and know-how that we can deploy to make a meaningful difference. And so the interesting thing for me here is this isn't about putting technology out for technology's sake, but it's taking the technology that we got and seeing if we can actually meaningfully contribute to a problem. The pilot suggests that there's evidence that this strategy has the ability to work, but owing to the small scale and the short timeline, we really haven't gone, I think, as deeply as we could go. I think the critical success factors will include shifting a mindset where needed. So to get away from that attitude that this is part of kids' growth and that helping them a little bit is really can accelerate that growth. And going forward, we're going to continue to work to broaden and deepen participation. So schools that are involved have expressed interest in staying involved. So we're looking at ways that we can actually broaden and sort of help them overcome any barriers that are standing in the way of broader participation. That is it.
Hang on, sir. Trustees, do you have any questions? Ben?
Any thought of employing it in grade 7 and 8 level? Because I can see that 7 and 8 level is probably the area that you could start to teach the kids that the parents would be more involved with. It would maybe solve that issue up. We're not teaching them to be independent. Maybe I'm just making a suggestion. It might be more beneficial at 7 and 8.
It's a great suggestion. I think that what we look for here was that oftentimes when you're dealing with 7s and 8s, you're dealing with kind of fewer number of teachers per student, and you don't have as many coordination issues. But all the kids in our board have an Office 365 account, whether they use it or not. So there's really no additional work for us to make the service available. It's just a matter of helping people become aware. So certainly a great strategy.
So this is a report as a result of the Ipsos, but then we've also tailored that or put that in with our board work plan as well to see an increase in the pilot. So my concern is that if we want to see an increase in the pilot, but the adoption rate or the consistent use remains the same, we've got some difficulties. So what are there any particular strategies and or maybe you can talk to me about how that will come forward in your director's plan about how you're going to tackle the strategies to increase the 21% as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's something that we're trying to grapple with right now too. So I think we've had some resources move around. So Tanya, for example, who is our lead on this, she's moved back to a teaching position. So we're starting to now look at. I think that one thing that really helped us in the last year with working with teachers is to have another teacher working with them. It's been much more effective than having IT staff go in and approach this through the lens of a technology problem, whereas Tanya was able to go in and speak to teachers as a teacher. So I think that's, and I think that's going to be one success factor. And the second success factor is that I think it really does come down to boots on the ground with shifting culture, is having a human being present in the school to do the training and the support, at least in the early going. And so I think that's what we got to do here is like survey what kind of resources do we have that we can deploy to support this, and then you can go broader and deeper. But I think it definitely is a matter of staying on top of it, and constant encouragement. And it's where we get the resource to do that is the next thing we need to have.
A question, please.
Okay, just a moment. Trustee McDonald has a follow-up.
With the resource then, so if the one individual's gone back to teaching, or do we have a teacher doing that now then?
You chair not at the moment. So really it's come to, I think, the principal in the school that has expressed an interest, and they would be driving adoption of it right now, but we don't have a sort of a central resource at the moment to drive adoption.
Right. I'm wondering if there maybe is a crossover to what Superintendent Coombs was presenting. It strikes me, hearing this, that there might be some real potential, and I'd be curious if I could ask him in relation to what you presented. Is there enough? Would this help?
Would there be, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, our I understand what you're saying is, could a learning partner or a grad coach which we're using, is basically a learning partner, be applied in that regard?
The calendar, that they have a reminder on their device when they are doing something else, that there is another place where they maybe could be if they chose to be.
That certainly their dance cards are pretty full at this time, but certainly there is a possibility. Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Trustee Swan first. Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Are there any partnerships being developed with children that don't have devices?
Mr. Chair? So I think there's a number of things that are significant here. So as I acknowledge, I think that we've heard from students that there's some that may or may not have a device, and they just flat out have a preference for paper. And so whether or not students have a device or don't have a device, we tend to look at technology as one of a series of strategies that we need to deploy. So it's not about, I think, whether we're going out with My Family Room for parents or other technology solutions. We see each of these technologies as one of a series of strategies we might employ to connect with people. So I wouldn't say that we would be doing this to the exclusion of all other strategies for helping kids manage. And one of the things that we can very easily do is just, once something's in the calendars, the teacher can just flat out print it out. Or they can continue to put the assignment due dates on the chalkboard or the whiteboard at the front of the class. But I think that, what we're trying to do here is recognizing, I think, the penetration of personal devices in our environment. We have over 20,000 board-owned devices in our schools, like iPads and computers and laptops. So the devices are there, and whether we use the device itself or we actually just print something off or do it another way, I think there's we can certainly accommodate the many preferences and needs that kids have.
Mr. McDonald, I'll ask you to conclude.
I just wanted to capture the fact that we have great technology here with all of our students having access to Office 365, all of our staff having Office 365 access. We don't have to. It doesn't appear to be the utilization of it, and I'm hoping that at some point we get either an update on utilization of current technology, and to see how we're going to, through the director's work plan, how we're going to increase that 21% buy-in, I guess, from a consistent use. So not solving the problem today, but over the course of the coming months, we can get some update perhaps.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hobbs, for your presentation. It's very elucidating again, and we look forward to increasing that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move quickly to 1204, which is a special motion. Could I have a mover to seconder, please? Pardon? Is there a second presentation? Did I miss it?
Culture survey.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Mover to seconder, please, for that motion. Trustee Barry, Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the rescheduling of the board meeting of Wednesday, January 22nd at 6:30 to January 29th, 2020 at 6:30 in order to permit trustees sufficient time to travel to the annual Public Education Symposium in Toronto. We've done this before in other years past. Any need for discussion? Please cast your vote. That motion carries. Director, moving on to the Director's Award of Merit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, it's always a pleasure to bring this report back to the board. The origin of the award came out of the action items like you heard this evening following the school culture surveys. And one of the school culture survey action items was to ensure that the district had additional recognition channels for staff that were going above and beyond their work and were highly valued by their workplaces and, of course, our organization. My pleasure to bring to you the 6 recipients who are Director Award of Merit winners for this fall. Our first recipient is Debbie Connell, who's the Elementary Office Administrator at Centennial 67 Public School. And her nominator said that Debbie is always cheerful and caring, so pleasant to talk to, makes you feel very welcomed upon arrival at the school. She always makes sure students' accomplishments are recognized, makes all volunteers comfortable, and lends a helping hand wherever it's needed. Secondly, we have a teacher who is a recipient of this fall award, Naomi Gadbois from Pleasant Corners Public School. And Madame Gadbois is being recognized as being extremely energetic, an innovative teacher who has earned the profound respect of students and parents alike, and that her leadership has opened up very exciting new opportunities for our school at Pleasant Corners. And the nominator goes on for quite a detailed description of the different types of things that Madame has been involved in at the school, and particularly noteworthy is connecting young women with the trades and Red Seal carpentry. So I thought that was pretty exciting stuff, and certainly there's a number of things that Madame has been involved in. Our third recipient is a person here at the central office, Casey Jones, our labor relations specialist in our human resources department. So Ms. Jones is actually, along with some other colleagues, involved in embracing project work that is pushing forward how we do case management in the HR department. The LaborSoft platform that we're using is a complete system that incorporates the work that LR labor relations specialists engage, and it captures a wide range of reports that are often parceled and parked elsewhere. That makes it very difficult when we're trying to develop a case management scenario for any of our employees. And so significant is this accomplishment that we're presenting at the Human Resources and Labor Symposium offered by OPSPA next spring. And that it really is a testament to Ms. Jones' diligence and her determination that we have this platform at our disposal. Another teacher that's being recognized this fall is a teacher from the East in Cornwall at Bridgewood Public School, Jim Lamoureux. And Jim teaches grade 4-5 to a diverse group of students, many who have unique learning challenges. He's always ensured that students feel included and tries to level the playing field for all of them, says the nominator. Last year as well, Bridgewood had experienced a challenge in terms of their sustaining their breakfast program. And it was Mr. Lamoureux who created a video and secured $5,000 of funding through a student nutrition program competition. And because of that, the school was able to continue with their breakfast program and address the deficit that they were carrying. The last two people I want to bring to your attention is Jason Perkins. And Mr. Perkins is a teacher at Westminster Public School here in Brockville. The nominator for Mr. Perkins noted that he very clearly takes time to reach out to each student. And I've seen him with his students. He takes time to get to know them. Mr. Perkins knows his students' strengths and weaknesses. He challenges them each and every day to do better than the day before, and he finds that what they're passionate about, and he empowers his students through those passions. And the last two people I'd like to draw to your attention is Julie Simons. She's our vice principal for our special education program, Section 23, in the eastern region of our district. And the nominator indicated that Julie comes to work every day with the plan and intention to make a difference in the lives of our students. She's working in special education, more specifically in Section 23, sees challenges as opportunities, and thinks about the whole child and how Section 23 programs can meet the current needs of individual children and their families. And lastly, I want to acknowledge that our sixth award recipient for the fall is Ryan Winter, secondary teacher at Glengarry District High School. The nominator for Mr. Winter indicates that students are involved in real-life building projects that give back to the community. For example, his woodshop students are building covered benches for the Soccer Association in Alexandria. The students are applying their skills in the classroom and then seeing the results of their work in the community. So we congratulate all these award recipients and the more than 40 nominations that we received. We have great staff. We're blessed with their talent and their commitment to our students, and they are doing great things every day. And these are among the best of the best, and we congratulate them and look forward to conferring the award through the board's ceremony in the spring.
Thank you, Director, for your work in this endeavor, as well as to the recipients of the Director's Award. Congratulations to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm mindful of time. We're going to need an extension, so I need a motion to extend till 10:30 max. Mr. McDonald, Trustee McPherson, all in favor, hands up. Thank you very much. Moving on to report from private session. That is Committee of the Whole meeting in private session November the 13th, 2019. 1 financial and 2 personnel matters were discussed. No recommendations were brought forward to the board. And I believe of 15, 16, there's no action. 17, that is an information item. 18, I need a motion to move into private session. Trustee Barry, Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole November 27, 2019 at 9:57. All in favor? Can we do this okay, Lisa? Is a hand vote? You sure? Yeah. Carried.
In favor.
Thank you. Need a motion, Trustee Swan, seconded by Ray, that Committee of the Whole move into private session November 27, 2019. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And I will turn this over to